is the WWF Women's Championship belt.
Whoa! Wait a minute, what? Look. That indeed it is. Trash can.
And that's what I think of the WWF Women's Championship belt. This is the WCW. I am now in the WCW. And they used to call me Alundra Blayze, but not anymore. Because this is where the big boys play, and now this is where the big girls play.
Flair, Arn Anderson nailed Macho Man. Arn Anderson nailed Macho. 1,
Kick out.
2, 3.
We got a new champion of the world. Unbelievable. Marching up at the end. Wow. The Four Horsemen have just electrified WCW and the world, throughout the world.
There was something in Arn Anderson's hand.
Look at Ric Flair, he's a mess.
Hello, my name is Bob Bamber and welcome to the Wrestling 20 Years Ago podcast, going back in the time machine to December of 1995 for volume 1 of this month's show. You'll get quite tired of this introduction by the end of the month because we've got 6 shows for you this month. In order, this is WCW, number 2 is WWF, ECW's volume 3, UFC's volume 4, the end of year review is volume 5 and the end of year awards are volume 6. We're here to discuss Starrcade amongst other things. I'm being joined firstly by Wayne Lythgoe. Wayne, good evening.
Yeah, how you doing, Bob?
Good. And Stewart Brookes.
Good evening, Bob.
Stewart kicks off with the news.
Ric Flair is the new WCW World Heavyweight Champion, defeating Randy Savage after a litany of interference from the Four Horsemen. Flair had Jimmy Hart in his corner for the match, there so he could provide a sufficiently long distraction to allow the interference from the Four Horsemen and for Flair to blade. Flair got the main event, having defeated Sting and Lex Luger immediately prior in a triangle match by countout. And you would be right not to believe this, but reports are that the decision to give Flair the belt was made by Hulk Hogan.
Starrcade, which was a WCW versus New Japan matches for the large part, represented WCW's best effort on a pay-per-view of the year. WCW won the World Cup of Wrestling 4-3, with wins for Lex Luger, Johnny B. Bad, Randy Savage and Sting. However, it was the 3 matches that Team WCW lost: Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, and surprising name in Alex Wright that made the show memorable.
Former WWF Women's Champion Alundra Blayze showed up on the December 18th WCW Monday Nitro, dumping the WWF Women's belt into a bin. She then said she would now be known as Medusa going forward, and said Nitro is now where the big girls play. Officially, her contract wasn't renewed by the WWF, who abandoned all current plans for Blayze versus Aja Kong at the Royal Rumble.
Matt Madden briefly ended up being fired after comments made on the WCW hotline about Kevin Sullivan's wife, Nancy, aka Woman, in WCW. While Madden was correct in his report that there were backstage plans to bring in Woman as Elizabeth, and per her with Randy Savage, people within the company didn't want it getting out. It said that WCW officials went berserk, while Nancy herself and ECW also weren't happy. That being said, there's enough truth in the story that people inside WCW didn't want to pursue it any further. Madden also pointed out that Hogan was booed in Charlotte, but people backstage realised they couldn't justify fire Madden as he followed protocol, and the hotline content had been recorded well in advance.
The one-man gang is the new WCW United States champion after an absolute mess in the post-show dark match at Starrcade. The story was Kazuki Sazaki refused to lose the title, so him against Sting was made into a non-title match on the main pay-per-view. The match with One Man Gang was unannounced and actually involved Sasaki kicking out before the three when One Man Gang was awarded the title. The match was quickly restarted. Sasaki won, but it's expected WCW will just ignore that bit.
Reports are that Hulk Hogan came up with the finish for World War III while in the ring for the main event. It said he told the final few wrestlers in the match of the new finish. The Public Enemy will be debuting at the Clash of the Champions in January against the Nasty Boys, although Vince McMahon says WCW will have no idea how to market them, and it's being said that there are considerations of cutting Nitro back to live once a fortnight, but that has been dropped as WCW want to keep full pressure on the WWF.
Mean Gene Okerlund gave Ricky Steamboat a surprise in a WCW hotline message announcing he will be honoured on Nitro after announcing his retirement. This, of course, was the first Steamboat had heard about any kind of retirement. Despite what we said last month about having someone in his ear, turns out Eric Bischoff actually has a live feed of Raw at his commentary desk, explaining why he's so sharp knowing when Raw is on commercial. And finally, Missy Hyatt's sexual harassment and wrongful termination lawsuit was settled out of court nearly 2 years after it was filed.
We conclude the news with what I'm going to introduce as a regular segment. We're going to do this on WWF and WCW shows, so you listen to them both, you'll get it twice. But basically reviewing the ratings, so they are quite important. So we start on November 27th, which saw Raw post a 2.4 against Nitro's 2.3. December 4th saw Nitro post a 2.6, headlined by Randy Savage against Lex Luger, over Raw's 2.4. December 11th, Nitro posted a 2.6 over Raw's 2.5. December 18th, Nitro posted a 2.7 against Raw's 2.4. The night WWF were coming off In Your House 5. On Christmas Day, there was no Raw episode, and due to the holiday, we don't have the number for Nitro either. We'll cover that in next month's show. One thing that WCW have moved in their favour is the use of an overrun. Each Nitro has been almost an hour before you even factor in commercials. They ran one into the 10 o'clock hour. On December the 4th, they picked up a 0.2 hike in the overrun, which is enough to tip the ratings battle in their favour. We open up on December the 4th with an announcement from Eric Bischoff. He says the WCW Executive Committee flew in Hulk Hogan, the Giant and Ric Flair, and all three are on probation. The show opens with Harlem Heat defending the tag titles against the American males. Parker has a gift for the Heat manager sister Sherry. It's some sort of shawl. Parker leads the match with Sherry, who is also wearing a ring. In other notes, Marcus Bagwell looks absolutely massive, and the Heat retain with the Harlem Hangover. We join Sting and Lex Luger on stage with Mean Gene. Sting says he wanted him without Jimmy Hart by his side. Sting reckons Luger is going to win the title tonight, and Sting thinks he will win the triangle match at Starrcade, so the two could face each other at the main event. Sting faces Kurosawa. Eric Bischoff breaks out another backleg round kick. He then asks, "Where's Parker?" Not convinced that WCW are going to pay that storyline off, Bobby. Anyway, Sting wins with the Scorpion Deathlock. Next up, we get the very perplexing matchup of the Giant and Scott Norton. Norton does pull off a rather impressive stalling reverse atomic drop. Bischoff says, "If we go over the hour, we go over the hour. Stay with us." The C in WCW stands for committed. Giant defeats Norton with a big chokeslam. Ric Flair is accompanied by Charles Barkley. Barkley heels it up, shushing the crowd. Despite his best efforts, Barkley's best efforts rather, Flair still gets booed. Flair then says that if Hogan, Sting, Savage or Luger jump in on the Horseman, Barkley might give up the NBA and become a Horseman. In the main event, it's Randy Savage against Lex Luger for the WCW World Heavyweight title. We will discuss that more in a minute. That match ended, no surprise, in a interference. After the match, Okerlund asks whether Hogan is worried about his probation. Hogan ignores the question, then asks Sting whose side he's on. Sting says he's on Hogan's side. Luger's his best friend and he's trying to straighten him out. We then get some friction between Savage and Sting. Hogan and Sting shake hands. Hogan tells Sting to keep Luger out of his face. That show, for what it's worth, was 55 minutes long, even without commercials, about 10 minutes longer than usual. December 11th opens up with a hot 4-minute match between Eddie Guerrero and Mr JL. Eric Bischoff calls an enziguri on the top rope a drop kick. JL then does a lovely running senton to Guerrero on the outside. Guerrero reverses a JL pin attempt for the win, but that was very good as short matches go. We get wins for Paul Orndorff over Disco Inferno and Lex Luger over Jim Duggan. The crowd pop big for the torture rack. With Benoit in Japan, we get 3/4 of the Four Horsemen out with Mean Gene. We're in Charlotte, so they get a very good reception. Pillman then starts doing some questionable impressions of the roster. Flair gets on the mic and gets loudly cheered. Orndorff interrupts proceedings, getting in Pillman's face and calling him a bag carrier. That starts a fight. Anderson ends up pile driving Orndorff on the concrete bar the R-way. Orndorff does a stretcher job so that he can have an excuse to get some time off and get some work done on his neck. And it also, in theory, was a way of trying to get some heat on the Horsemen in a very pro-Horseman crowd. As we will discuss in a minute, that didn't particularly work in the main event with Arn Anderson and Ric Flair against Sting and Hulk Hogan. This match did actually have a clean finish. Hogan no-sold Anderson spine buster and then hit a big boot, dropped the leg and won. After the match, Pillman came out, Luger also came out and attempted to play peacemaker. Savage came out, Sting levelled him with the right hand, but looks like he immediately regretted it. Hogan is now out trying to play peacemaker between Savage and Sting. Savage says he hates Luger, then confronts Sting about the punch. Sting said he preempted what he thought was a Savage attack. Savage and Sting shake hands. Right, this is where we will now jump into some discussion about these some main events on these two shows, as well as a couple of the notes from later on, and then we will bridge the gap between the end of the discussion and the pay-per-view with the second half of the TV review.
Hulk Hogan, you come on in here. You know, you were on probation. You were on probation, and you touched another referee tonight.
Well, you know something, brother? We're not worried about no stinking probation, man. All I want to know is next week, brother, you and I, who are friends, are supposed to team up to kick Ric Flair and Arn Anderson from here and there and back again. I just want to know, what's the deal with Luger, and do you know what side you're on?
What about that jaw, Sting?
Say it straight up, brother.
Okay, Macho Man wants me to say it straight up, and so do you, Hulkster. I am on your side.
Well, then what's going on with Lex Luger?
Lex Luger is my best friend. I don't agree with the Jimmy Hart thing going on. He's mixed up right now. I'm trying to straighten him out, and I don't have a problem with that, and neither should you. Would you run out on a friend? Would you run out on Macho Man? Let me ask you another question. Sometimes I question this man right here. He's a heck of a guy, but I question him and some of his motives. But I am not going to down the Macho Man. So why do you every single week have to down the total package?
Well, let me tell you, if we're going to backtrack, brother, digress, as some idiots may say, Macho Man is the one that warned us all about Luger in the first place.
That's right.
Straight up, brother. And I called it like I saw it, and I believe that, I think that I called it right up.
Okay, you think you called it like it was right straight up, but maybe Luger's fuse is just about that long, this much shorter than yours, mine, or yours. Maybe you just didn't give him the opportunity that he felt he wanted.
Oh, really? Oh, is that right?
Possibly.
All right, what do you got to say?
I'm not pointing fingers, I'm just pointing out a possible fact.
Make your point, tell me.
Wait a minute, have we got a little friction? Have we more friction than we had before?
All I can say is, Hulkster, we are going up against the Nature Boy Ric Flair, a person who I despise. And Arn Anderson, I can't stand him either. And if you and me don't get our stuff straight once and for all, we may lose the whole deal here.
Well, let me tell you something, brother. You're my friend, dude. I'm going to climb in that ring next Monday, Nitro. We're going to kick Ric Flair and Arn Anderson out of the building. Do me one favor. Keep Luger out of my face.
Seems like a reasonable request for a tag team partner.
I'm here to make one last statement. And that is, I will do everything in my power to keep Luger out of your face, Macho Man, and God knows I want to keep him out of your face, Hulkster, and I'll do it.
I think that is good enough, gentlemen. We're taking a look at these two men collaborating next Monday night right here on WCW's Monday Nitro.
Right, a slightly different show for you this month. We will be reviewing Starrcade, but we're going to do that kind of in the second half. Basically, Starrcade happens on December the 27th. There's a lot of TV news to cover, and there's some stuff that we've got to discuss. Generally, we shunt that at the end, but there's one very big story that we'll discuss in a minute, as well as a few quite interesting main events. So we're going to kind of discuss those. If you are here to listen to the Starrcade review, I will put a time marking in the podcast notes so you can work out where to skip ahead from. Anyway, we will start with the first Nitro of the month. Randy Savage against Lex Luger. I've got kind of my notes that I wrote down for what would have been the TV report that I will now read verbatim, and then we'll discuss it. So we go into the main event, Savage against Luger, and it's for the title. They're now saying Savage is wrestling injured after what happened last month. This match is far longer than their previous two and significantly better. At one stage, Savage takes a swing at the referee. They're trying to explain that his vision was impaired. Jimmy Hart whips off the turnbuckle pad, but that backfires when Savage rams Luger's head into it. It sends Luger loopy so much the ref takes a bump. Savage hits an elbow, but there's no ref. Out comes Flair, who nails Savage with some brass knuckles. Hart puts Luger on top of Savage with a pin, but again there's no ref. Meanwhile, Flair is hightailing it up the aisle, but Hogan comes out and blocks its path. The ref comes to count the pin. Hogan, now in the ring, stops the referee's count just before the 3, causing the DQ and stopping Luger from winning the title. Hogan shapes to hit Luger, Sting runs out, Luger ducks, and Hogan hits Sting. And starting the first of what will become a regular feature on this month's edition or shows of Nitro, Savage has to split Hogan and Sting apart. That's a triangle that will feature quite regularly. Stuart, this match was 17 minutes. And I don't want to overstate it, given that it was in front of quite a placid crowd, but I don't know that in the timeline of our podcast and yours as well, that we've seen a Luger match as good as this. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, this was pretty decent, and it was certainly better than their effort at Halloween Havoc, which was dire, and again at World War III it wasn't great. So, yeah, as far as Luger matches go, this was pretty decent. Luger's a funny one. He's one of those, when he turns up motivated, you can get good stuff out of him, but if he doesn't, you're not going to.
Why?
Yeah, I mean, totally agree. When, before it was going on, I thought, we've seen this already and they've not been that great. Halloween Havoc being a perfect example of these two not putting on a great showing at all. But yeah, I was really surprised by it. I thought it was, they did well for the length of time that they went for, and put on a really, a really surprisingly good match on for that length.
Yeah, 17 minutes long match, and we'll probably discuss this at the end of the 3 in terms of where Nitro's going with all these main event finishes. But I think if you'd have said Savage and Luger 17 minutes, I probably would have expected something significantly worse than this, which, isn't the highest praise, but that says something. And Stewart's right, Luger is in a very weird category where I feel like if he really needed to, and he was in the ring with the right opponent, and I would still put an injured Savage just about in that category of being a right opponent, I feel like he could produce something good. And Stuart, we'll come to it at the end more, but in terms of the finish, I didn't mind this hokey finish in the sense that, one thing they did a really good job of was, and they did last month as well, was that Savage in jeopardy as champion. Luger, alright, thanks to Flair, should have been champion.
Yeah, I think it's just a case of they love loading these segments with star power, so it's almost like with WCW, just having Savage and Luger in the ring isn't enough. You have to add Flair, you have to have Hogan, you have to add Sting, and it just gets all these people in the mix on a weekly basis now, that all these guys are all interacting in the same segment rather than sort of being interspersed throughout the show.
Why?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, it can be, quite overkill with WCW throwing all this star power in, but, I didn't mind the finish for this one. I didn't mind all the interaction with Flair and Hogan and then Sting getting involved. So yeah, no complaints on me, on that one.
We'll jump forward now to the 11th of December edition of Nitro. Again, to the main event. What we'll do is we've split the TV reports that I pre-tape, half before this bit we're recording now and half at the end. And I will have said, and as I will say for the next one, we've discussed it, or we will discuss it. So, we move on to the main event of Arn Anderson and Ric Flair versus Sting and Hulk Hogan. Sting comes out alone. Hogan follows shortly after, but isn't happy about something. I think Heenan says, "Where's Hogan?" And my expectation was, well, wouldn't Hogan get his own music? but on this situation, not. We get large Hogan sucks chants early in the match. Hogan has even developed a new hand signal mocking the Four Horsemen sign, who says he doesn't evolve. Other than the crowd doing pretty much exactly the opposite of what WCW wanted, this is a really fun tag match. Hogan ends up no-selling a spine buster before hitting a soft big boot, dropping the leg, and pinning Arn Anderson. Stuart, what do you think of this?
It was okay. Just okay. It wasn't a great tag team match. I just think they need to be careful in terms of where they're taking Nitro, because these anti-Hogan crowd reactions are getting quite vociferous.
Yeah, no, I can't disagree with that. I mean, as I said there, this, other than, the crowd doing almost the opposite of what the company probably would have wanted, I imagine backstage they would have been thinking, well, we've got the Horsemen, Anderson and Flair, heels. So what we'll do is we'll put Hogan with, they might not want to say it like this, but the most popular guy we've got in Sting. And then when it was a situation where Sting's getting cheered, Hogan's getting booed, Flair's getting cheered, and Anderson's reaction's middling. Really odd. And sure, it's difficult to do it in the sense that it's difficult to try and create this big main event scene and not have Hogan interact with Sting, but it's not helping him.
No, not at all. And yeah, like you say, your biggest heel in this match is Hulk Hogan as far as the crowd's concerned. And the danger is that people are watching this on television, and when they go and see the events, it's an effect that will snowball based on what they're seeing on not quite a weekly basis, but certainly an increasing basis.
Wayne, they kept Hogan on the basis that they could apply pressure to Raw at a time where they feel Raw in the WWF is quite weak. Was it worth it?
I'm kind of getting the feeling of, do they need to? As we've seen in the ratings, they're pushing up. I don't think it was worth it, in all honesty. I think they can, go without him at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, yes, that they have, if we're going to talk about a ratings battle, they have snuck a very slight marginal victory for the month of December. There was a fascinating bit, I think, looking in the Wrestling Observer, looking at the end of year, ratings averages. And I think, in the time between when Nitro started, if you exclude the one where it didn't run, every week they ran head to head, and Raw on average is something like 0.06 of a ratings point higher on average than Nitro over the course of the 3 months. I don't know what that says. It's difficult to, in the sense that Raw had 2 years of established, time and value. And so you've got to give them that. There's a lot of habitual viewing on Monday nights for people tuning into Raw. And yet equally, WCW is throwing all this star power at them. And it's difficult to say whether, we don't know whether they're making a difference or not. It's hard to work out whether Hogan stopped drawing and 2.5 is kind of their limit, or whether people are still more habitually, used to watching Raw on Monday nights, and so you need Hogan to drag them up. But I think less for the ratings and almost just for the freshness of Hogan's character. It kind of might be a bit better if they'd have let him stay off TV for a while. But, as it was, I thought it was a fun match, as I said in my notes. It's a sort of a paint-by-numbers tag match, and we'll discuss it at the end of this in terms of how they're using their overrun. A longer main event than certainly anything before December. Nitro opens up on December the 18th. Eric Bischoff is interrupted in his opening comments by Alundra Blayze, who walks up behind them and says she now wants to be known as Medusa. She grabs a bin, holds up the actual WWF Women's title, puts it in the bin, says this is where the big girls play, and that is the end, Wayne, of a damn surprising opening segment.
Yeah, I mean, WCW certainly do like to hit us with a wow factor, and this is a shock moment. Wasn't expecting her to walk on, wasn't expecting her to show a women's title, and I damn sure wasn't expecting her to throw it in a bin. What's going to be the kickback with WWF remains to be seen, but it's again WCW throwing everything at the viewing audience and saying, we're just going to keep shocking you, keep watching us, and that's probably only going to get more eyes on the product as well.
Stuart?
This, for me, felt like the next step up from Bischoff giving away Raw's results on air. This is rather, Bischoff poking Vince, but this is probably him full on slapping him in the face, just to try and perhaps get a reaction out of him.
Yeah, great segment. We'll discuss in a minute about, some of the things that I think they could do differently about Nitro to improve it, but this is the Luger moment again. This is the reminder. The one thing, Eric Bischoff can't deliver shocks like this every week, but if you can deliver them frequently enough where you can convince people, you've got to tune in just in case. And again, this has fallen into his lap much like the Luger thing did. Alundra Blayze's WWF contract expired about 5 days earlier. Now, when we know a contract's expiring to a point, you can work in advance. But according to all reports, and as we certainly see on the WWF news report, I don't know if we covered it in this one, WWF effectively released her. They didn't renew her contract, so I don't know how much notice there was here. But Stuart, there's another question we can look at this. I mean, for a WCW standpoint, okay, now you've got Alundra Blayze as Medusa, fair enough, but you don't have a women's division.
Is this then perhaps the reason they were using the Bull Nakanos, Akira Hokutos, and they're like last month? Did they have some inkling that Alundra Blayze's contract was up and wanted to get something ready for her? Or is that just a coincidence?
I think given the amount of time they had that whole thing prepared in advance, I would think that's just a coincidence, given that they had that booked a good couple of months earlier, I would think, and that relationship with New Japan has been going, Eric Bischoff's been building that for a while, and the fact that as of 4 weeks ago, 4 or 5 weeks ago at the Survivor Series, WWF were clearly building to Alundra Blayze and Aja Kong. Unless they're clairvoyant, I mean, okay, Alundra Blayze's contract was expiring, but unless they had, information from her that, I'm going to walk out, this is your opportunity, I would doubt it. I think the other thing as well is that it's not like I don't get the feeling the women's wrestling, division, whatever you want to call it, I don't get the sense the stocks of women wrestlers in the States are all that strong at the moment. So whether it's going to be a case of they just start shipping in people from Japan. But it's certainly interesting. One thing we never really discussed is why WCW don't have a women's division. Stuart, any more thoughts in terms of the kind of prospects of this? It was undeniably a fantastic moment, but has it got long-term legs?
Well, yeah, that was exactly where I was going to go with it. It all depends on the follow-up because, she wasn't primarily a wrestler, Medusa, in her previous stint in WCW. So do they plan on bringing her back in a managerial role, kind of what she was doing with the Dangerous Alliance and Paulie Dangerously? Do they plan on putting her back in that sort of role? Or are they going to create a women's division around her and theme it around, well, I've thrown the WWF women's division in the bin and I've created this new sort of empire over here. So it all depends on the follow-up. If it stands alone as a moment, it'll always stand alone as a shocking moment and certainly a big one. But you kind of, in the short term, look forward and think, where will they go with it?
Why?
Yeah, well, like Stuart said, it all depends on the follow-up. Just basically what he was saying that I was going to pick up on again. We've seen her in a non-wrestling capacity before when she was part of the Dangerous Alliance and she was a valet. Maybe we're going to see her that. It looks like WCW are already making the moves on potentially bringing more women in. With obviously thoughts of bringing women in. So maybe they're just thinking about it in this sense and bulking up the women as maybe eye candy. I don't know. You don't know what goes on with WCW's minds, but maybe that's something to do with it.
No, and as we'll discuss the evolution of the Diamond Doll, now aka Kimberly, in the pay-per-view itself. But yeah, I think it will be interesting to see. I mean, noteworthy that other than that appearance, she didn't appear on that Nitro or on the one they taped the same evening. Given that they taped them both in the same night, given that it was a late deal, I think we'll give them a pass on that, given that it came together quite late. It's not like you bring in a male wrestler, you could chuck them out in a squash match. If you don't have another female wrestler there's not a lot you can do. But yeah, I think it will be interesting. I feel that if there's any residual legs in her, drawing any attraction from being a former WWF performer, January is going to be that time, and then that will kind of level out because she wasn't particularly a big deal. Stewart, very quickly, thoughts on where this leaves the WWF Women's Division? I mean, it wasn't really a division beforehand, but they've lost their champion. They may well have lost their belt. I think they might just sideline it.
Oh yeah, I can't see any way it won't be just dead in the water. Like you say, there was never really a division. It was around the better part of 2 years, but it was always based around Alundra Blayze versus X. Yes, they took the title off for a couple of times. They gave it to Bull Nakano, and I believe they gave it to Bertha Faye, if I remember correctly, for a short period of time. But other than that, the division was her. She was the division, and people came in and circled out around her. So I can't see the WWF bringing in another women's wrestler to replace her and do the program against Aja Kong.
Yeah, and in all honesty, they've got bigger problems right now. Like, sort your men's shit out first, and then maybe in 6 months' time, when that's in a bit more order, you can reintroduce a women's division or even one or two performers. We'll finish this month with the review of the main event of the 18th edition of Nitro. Randy Savage once again defending his WCW World Heavyweight title against the Giant. Savage attempts a body slam, which doesn't end well. Giant dominates the next few minutes, all going for a massive top rope diving splash. Yes, that is correct. A highly impressive effort. Savage moves, then does a top rope elbow. Giant kicks out, which sends Savage flying before Giant then did a drop kick. He hit a massive choke slam, then does a leg drop. Hogan runs out with a chair, breaks up the pin and forces a DQ. Hogan lays waste to the Giant at the Taskmaster with a chair until William Perry and Steve McMichael, who Perry was introduced earlier in the show, actually like seconds after the Alundra Blayze thing finished, come out and try and calm him down. Hogan wipes out Doug Dillinger with a chair. They're basically telling the story that Hogan has gone nuts with a view of getting himself suspended. Segment ends with Hogan again laying waste for a steel chair. Hogan says Savage owes him a title shot. Savage says the world wants to see Hogan versus Savage, and once he's dealt with more immediate problems, he will give him one. Shoot, Giant in his fourth match. It's not particularly coherent at the moment, but he's doing some impressive shit.
Yeah, for someone who's only been around essentially for about 2 months, he can do a lot of stuff, and he's a big guy. At the minute he's of decent size without being, sort of King Kong Bundy size, so it'll be interesting to see kind of what athleticism he can bring to the table in the role that he's got.
Yeah, you get some wrestlers that are quite tall that are quite short but feel taller, and you get a guy like him who's actually quite tall but doesn't always come across like that. I don't necessarily know why. But I don't know. I guess it's a trade-off. If he can do this stuff, great, but I don't know necessarily that you want him to be doing this stuff. In terms of, he's a big guy, let him wrestle a big guy style. That being said, again, for a pretty long main event with, a guy like Savage, but an injured Savage in, I say fourth match, it may be a few more than that, but it's certainly not many. He held his own a bit like Hogan at Halloween Havoc. It wasn't necessarily any good, but it had the potential to be a lot worse. Stuart, what did you think of this? All this Hogan, Savage, Sting, chicanery. I mean, it all got a bit samey, didn't it?
Well, it's kind of been going in this circle for about the better part of 2 months now. And you even had the segment at World War III where Hogan comes out and says, "Oh, I was wrong about Sting. I'll never doubt you again." And then 2 weeks later, we're back to, "Where are you coming from, brother? What's your angle?" And are we killing time until the new year?
Well, we're killing time until the pay-per-view, I think. Now that Savage is no longer champion, now it's Flair, I'm guessing the storyline has changed. But yeah, essentially, I think it comes back to what we said earlier. They just wanted to pack people into the final segment, come what may. I mean, I haven't probably illustrated it fully, but the amount of time Sting and Lex Luger asked respectfully about each other's relationship, it was like, Sting was getting bored with the question, because Oakland asked him every fucking week about what's happening with Luger, and you could, like, Sting's not a great promo as it is, and he's like, oh, I've got to answer this question again. It did get a bit repetitive, but, to a point there, again, we'll come to this thing in a sec, but they're talking about an overrun. Theory is, people have finished Raw. Let's see what's happening on Nitro. Oh, it's Hogan, Savage and Sting. I think that's 80% of the idea. Is just to let people turn the channel and let them see these guys think, oh, well, these are bigger stars than, whoever's in the Raw main event, Bulldog and whoever he was facing. I guess that was the idea. Shit, what did you think of Nitro using this overrun? I think, first time out when Eric Bischoff said, look, we're just going to stick with this match, I quite liked it. I thought, you know what, you want to present Nitro like it's live and like it's a sporting event. Sporting events can overrun. I quite like this. 4th week in a row, it was quite losing its luster a bit, I suspect.
Yeah, I don't think the WCW guys will give up on it too soon. There's many other things that they've never given up on, so I've got no hope that they'll give up on this, even if it does. The every week viewer watching it, maybe it's drains them a little bit, but they're just thinking about new people turning WWF off and coming and seeing what's happening on WCW. Talking about the overrun as a whole, though, this to start off with, I think it's a pretty neat idea, and I suppose it's what you can get away with when the guy that owns the actual business also owns the network that it's going out on as well. So if they're going to get away with it, then they're just going to carry on doing it.
Stuart?
It's all plays back into any tiny edge or any tiny advantage Eric Bischoff thinks he can get on Vince McMahon. He will take it, even to the point of running it into the ground. So the giving away results, he ran that into the ground. This one, he'll probably do the same thing.
Yeah, I don't know he's done that many result giveaways recently. Maybe I've zoned out of those, but I'm noticing them less if he is. But yeah, I agree. And, I suppose to a point, like if I'm Eric Bischoff and I think I've got hot products, I'd rather have an hour and 10 minutes rather than an hour. It's giving me an extra 10 minutes. Let's just make it part of the show. Let's make it a bit longer. We'll discuss in the end of year review, whether these endings of these main events are productive, but I think in terms of just if you're trying to build to a big match, if you're going to do Hogan and Sting like they did last month, better give it the 17 minutes that Savage and Luger got at the beginning of December than the 7 or 8 that Hogan and Sting got. We'll talk about the finishes later on, but in terms of the actual showpiece, if people see, oh, it's Hogan and Sting, but Nitro's going to be off the air in 6 minutes, I'm probably not going to see a classic. So they build in this implied overrun, even if it's always there.
Here's a question for you, Bob. Oh. How about doing it at the opposite end? What would you make to them starting Nitro like 5 minutes early?
Would anyone, every week or once off?
Yeah, so just on a regular basis, do you think it would be wiser to try and get people who find the show before they start watching Raw and stay and watch the whole hour, or is it better to try and capture these people for 10 minutes at the end?
It's more difficult because the whole point of doing the bit on the end is it's live. Anything can happen. It's wrestling. Like we know, tongue in cheek, the match finishes when we're going to go off the air, but like, if we're trying to imply that it's live, it can go long. I don't know quite what justification you can say, well, we're going to start early. And that's a difficult thing to set up. I mean, I guess if they want to just, if Bischoff says, look, can we start this show 10 minutes early so we can get a run on Raw? But we're getting into petulance for the sake of petulance. I feel. I wouldn't put it beyond Bischoff though. Let me finish with that. Nitro opens up on December the 18th with Eric Bischoff being interrupted in his opening comments by Alundra Blayze, who walks up behind him and says she now wants to be known as Medusa. She grabs a bin, holds up the actual WWF Women's Championship belt, drops it in the bin, says, "This is where the big girls play." Steve McMichael is getting rather annoyed by people interrupting them in the announcing position, so he calls up William Refrigerator Perry to be on the lookout. Eddie Guerrero takes a tumble off the top turnbuckle during the opening match from Ric Flair, injuring his knee in storyline. Flair locks in the figure four, grabs onto the ropes. Guerrero hangs on before passing out and losing by pinfall. Flair continues the attack even after Mean Gene Okerlund gets in the ring for an interview. Taskmaster interrupts the interview with Anderson. Taskmaster calls Pillman a loose cannon, and he says Anderson better keep Pillman on a leash. Anderson says if the Taskmaster comes looking for Pillman, he might just get Anderson and Flair. Perry, inexplicably, isn't around when Sergeant Craig Pittman comes to the announcer's desk. Pittman calls Heenan one of the greatest managers of all time and asks Heenan if he would manage him. Heenan says he's done managing, but he can recommend him to someone who will take care of his finances and his affairs. Lex Luger defeats Marcus Bagwell with the torture rack. Luger says he's the uncrowned world champion. He's made Savage submit, and if it wasn't for Hogan, he would have pinned him too, and he'd be the champ. Bobby Eaton is out with a new servant called Jeeves. Sting puts him away. He's a little miffed by Lex Luger's comments. He says he's a 5-time world champion and he would love to make it 6. In the main event, Randy Savage faces the Giant for the WCW World Heavyweight Title, which you already would have heard us discuss. We end the year with Nitro on Christmas Day, a pre-taped edition from the previous week. Heenan looks particularly bar humbug wearing a Christmas hat. Luger defeats Scotty Riggs in the opener. Sting is even getting bored about being asked questions about Luger now. Sting is briefly taken aback by the scorpion lighting on the R-Wave. He defeats Big Bubba. Lex Luger and Jimmy Hart cut a promo. They get interrupted by Sergeant Craig Pittman. Pittman asks Hart to manage him. Hart asks Pittman to take his shirt off before saying he needs a body like Lex Luger to be managed by Jimmy Hart. Next up, it's Dean Malenko against Mr JL. Melenko breaks out an impressive top rope gutbuster before submitting JL. Jimmy Hart interrupts a Ric Flair promo, apologising for last week. Hart asks if he can be at ringside tonight when Flair beats Savage for the title. Flair says he's welcome to. Savage locks in the figure 4 on Flair. Savage attempts to grab a chair from ringside, but the ref dissuades him. Savage and Flair have a very good match, a very long main event, before Luger runs in for the DQ interference. The biggest Christmas miracle of all would have been a clean finish and a Nitro main event. We close the show with a Sting and Savage stare down.
Bring in the 4 Horsemen. They are back on Monday Nitro. Brian Pillman, the Enforcer, Arn Anderson, and the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. As you know, a little bit later on tonight, right here live on Nitro, it's going to be the Nature Boy and the Enforcer squaring off against Hulk Hogan and Sting. Before I get to that, though, Brian Pillman, come on in. What is it like to be a part of the Horsemen along with Chris Benoit?
It's a chance of a lifetime to be a part of the greatest dynasty in the history of professional sports. Everybody on the planet wanted to be a Horseman, including the top dog, the Hulkster. He wanted it so bad. He chucked the prayers, the vitamins, and the training, adorned himself in black. He played the bad guy. But when the whiskey drinking, skirt chasing, limo riding got the best of him, he ripped off the black spandex and threw it in a burning trash can. Well, Hogan, we don't have the luxury of ripping our black hearts out of our chests because we are the bad guys. But I still want you to know, I love you, man.
Oh, give me a break, please.
Come on, Gene. Don't cut me off. The American males said Slick Rick AA, 8x10 glossies of them, and Steve McMichael can't comment on their content. But I'll say this, Big Michael, for a big guy, you're pretty flexible.
Okay, what's the point?
Well, the point is, you want the Dungeon of Doom?
You want to talk? No, I don't want the Dungeon of Doom audition.
Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no.
Talking about the Zodiac. Everybody was...
Let's not forget about the guy that just wrestled. Mr. Wonderful, who was once Horseman material, had the killer instinct, would cut your throat for 50 cents. Now, he's not a member of the Horsemen. He's a member of the Psychic Friends Network. He's spilling his guts to Gary Spivey and Dionne Warwick for $4.99 a minute.
You know, I don't know.
Please.
You're getting carried away.
Bring the focus back to the athlete.
Yes.
As Double A would say, let's pause in all this. It's the Enforcer. It's Flying Brian. And it's the Nature Boy.
We are live from your hometown.
In Charlotte, North Carolina. And tonight, when Hogan and Sting walk that aisle, they're going to meet up.
Hey.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I have the utmost respect for you, Rick, and you, Arn Anderson. But let me tell you something, you snotty-nosed little punk. Let me tell you what's really happening. The fact of the matter is, Pillman, I could have been a four horseman. And that's the only reason that you are. Oh, the fact is, you've reached a high level of mediocrity. Brian, hold it a minute. Listen, Paul.
Wait a minute.
I know you got a bad temper. We don't want this. We don't want another incident like having a few months ago.
He was a man's man.
Uh-oh. Take it easy here, please. Let's let cooler heads prevail.
No, wait a minute. That cooler heads is here. You got this snotty little punk up here running his mouth about me. Let me tell you something, Pillman. This is a fact. If you like carrying people's bags, if you like chauffeuring the four horsemen around,
this one's gonna
then
blow
I
up.
guess that makes you a horseman. Because that's exactly what you're doing. You shouldn't even be one, and the only reason
This is going to escalate.
Oh, you're going to get him!
There it goes.
Here we go. Oh, don't do this, Paul. You got the horseman.
And we move on to Starrcade. It's a Wednesday night, so there is no main event to discuss. Stewart kicks us off with the results.
In the first match of the World Cup of Wrestling, Jushin Thunder Liger defeated Chris Benoit. Koji Kanemoto defeated Alex Wright. Lex Luger defeated Masahiro Chono. Johnny B. Bad defeated Masa Saito. Shinjiro Otani defeated Eddie Guerrero. Randy Savage defeated Hiroyoshi Tenzan. And in the final World Cup of Wrestling match, Sting defeated Kensuke Sasaki. In a triangle match to determine the number one contender to the WCW World Heavyweight Championship, Ric Flair defeated Lex Luger and Sting by countout. And in the main event, Ric Flair defeated Randy Savage to win the WCW World Heavyweight Championship.
Wayne, what do you think of this show?
We've seen a lot of bad pay-per-views this year from WCW, and going into it, I wasn't that high on this one due to the concept. It's the biggest pay-per-view of the year. I'm either expecting continuing storylines or feuds at an endpoint. The main issue more than anything is it's a WCW versus New Japan Pro Wrestling on a WCW pay-per-view. So, spoiler alert, the company running the pay-per-view are not going to lose. That being said, when it showed the card up at the start and I saw what matches we were going to see, it definitely picked up my interest and I was happy with what I saw for the most of it.
Sure.
Yeah, it was a show of two halves, really, from the sense that there was some quite decent in-ring stuff from the undercard guys, but a lot of what was going on with the main event guys was a bit nonsensical, so you kind of had that traditional WCW dichotomy of strong in-ring, questionable out-of-ring.
Yeah, I mean, To quickly clarify in terms of, you may have noticed during the TV review and the stuff we discussed, there was hardly any build mentioned on Nitro ahead of this show in terms of the matchups or the concept or the storyline or anything. And that's because there wasn't. I haven't seen much of Saturday Night this month, but I get the perception there's been a bit more on that because they could pre-tape Saturday Night in chunks, and this was certainly the case with WCW Pro. They were able to fly people in and do the pre-tapes from Japan and give it a bit more build. The problem is because Nitro's every week, you can't fly them in for a Monday night and then send them back each week. It costs you a fortune. So if you're just watching Nitro, and that was kind of me this month, you didn't get a lot of build, and there was some oddities. We'll come on to the Benoit thing in a minute, Benoit wasn't really sure what to do, and given that, he's meant to be a heel as part of the big heel faction, he's getting cheered, and then at the end he does the in-ring celebration with all the baby faces, and he's trying not really sure what to do, and I can't really blame him. That being said, the action in the first half of the show was on the whole very good. No surprise, you put good workers in with good workers, or in a lot of cases, very good workers in with very good workers, you get very good action. And then the show kind of, I would say it nosedived. The final two matches were short enough that nothing really happened. And then I think, as Dave Meltzer said, this was kind of like, we kind of saw the future in the first half of the show and then the past in the second. It was like the future was all this high-flying, athletic, in-ring technicians, and then we get a 30-minute match between Ric Flair, Sting and Luger, which I actually didn't think was all that bad. It went a bit long. And then a main event that was... it can't be as irrelevant as Hogan and Butcher from last year, but I can't think many Starrcade matches have been... main events have been more, we got a title change. I mean, go back 2 years, we got Flair and Vader at Starrcade, like this phenomenal main event. And this was a main event that had no build, a matchup that didn't particularly make sense. I know Flair and Savage have been feuding, but it was, and then, we'll get to that finish. Anyway, we start there billing this as the World Cup of Wrestling between WCW and New Japan. We're in Nashville. Bobby Heenan and Bobby Heenan, that would have been a funny turn-up. Bobby Heenan, Dusty Rhodes and Tony Schiavone have the call. Well, to go through the format again, the first 7 matches are all tournament matches. So basically it's a WCW guy against a New Japan guy. And when I say there was no build, on Nitro at least, there was no mention of, selection or what these guys have done to earn their spots, and I think we'll discuss it in a minute. In the case of Benoit, it probably could have done with that. Anyway, Benoit is out first facing Jushin Thunder Liger with Sunny Ono. Ono did accompany every single member of New Japan to the ring for their matches. Liger starts with multiple arm drags, sending Benoit to the outside with a baseball slide and a running senton from the apron. Liger bridges out of a submission into a head scissors, charges at Benoit, who hits a tilt and whirl backbreaker. Benoit is getting cheered heavily. Benoit hits a snap suplex, then a back suplex. He then locks in a horrendous looking vertical Boston Crab. Benoit does a German suplex but cannot get a 3. Liger locks in a surfboard submission but gets a pop from Heenan on commentary. Liger converts that into a reverse crossface, then goes for a camel clutch. Benoit sets for a tombstone pile driver. Liger reverses it but turns it into a pancake manoeuvre. Liger goes to the top, Benoit follows and hits the superplex, which the crowd come alive for. Benoit goes for a diving headbutt, but Liger moves. Liger hits a powerbomb, but the ref does an unusually slow count, and Benoit kicks out. I don't think that was part of the storyline, I just think it was a slow count. Liger hits a lovely brainbuster, Benoit kicks out. Benoit hits a pair of German suplexes, then a lovely powerbomb. He ascends to the top rope again, hits a diving headbutt. The Taskmaster comes out, Benoit gets distracted. Liger hits a really sloppy Hurricane Rana, manages to rescue it, and gets the 3 count. Wayne?
I was, like I said before, as soon as I saw the card and I saw that these two would be going at it, I was really excited. There's a lot of history between these two in another promotion. Now, I can understand why, but I would have thought that, we've got these Japanese guys coming in another promotion. I thought it would have made this match a little bit more interesting if they would have played on that a little bit. But I could probably understand why with why they're not wanting to talk about it. But I just thought it would have just made it a little bit more compelling, really. another reason why I'm not au fait about this kind of concept, about one promotion coming into another and fighting is you touched on it before. Benoit was getting cheered. It was like he's just joined a heel faction. He's a heel and he's getting cheered here, and he didn't know what to do and which way to go, etc. But the match itself, it was a fast start, which it was always going to be. I particularly liked the reversals from both when they were doing the move sets. When it slowed down a little, they was getting ready for that hot ending, and the crowd was really hot for it and really behind Benoit when he got up on that turnbuckle and did the superplex. The other thing as well is, I thought the commentary team, although I've just named and shamed them for one thing. I think I'll give them credit where it's due for the fact that Benoit kicking out for the Liger Bomb and also the Brainbuster as well. These are two big moves, and I think for the Liger Bomb, they mentioned about that Liger didn't put his leg over fully, and then also for the Brainbuster, saying it was an arrogant pin. He didn't really get the leg up, etc. So credit where credit's due on that one. The WCW finish, isn't it? We've seen a lot of them this year, and obviously it was a sloppy unscrew finish, and the Taskmaster getting involved, and like you said, the finish from Liger, it was just a shame that it just ended like that.
Stewart.
Yeah, with the exception of the slightly sloppy finish and the rather random interference of the Taskmaster. I know he's supposed to be feuding with Pillman, but Pillman wasn't even at ringside with Benoit. But bar that, I mean, this was an excellent opener. Like Wayne mentioned, you've got the benefit of the fact that these guys have wrestled each other plenty before, but to an American audience, these two against each other is new. So they were able to run through a lot of stuff they've done in their matches together before, but it feels quite fresh in this context. And the crowd bought into it, even from the confusing perspective, again, as Wayne mentioned, that Benoit's just turned heel, but he's being positioned as a face by simply being on the WCW team. Although parts of this presented it as America versus Japan, and then parts of it presented it as WCW versus Japan, and then you get confusing things with Benoit and Alex Wright. Yeah,
we'll come to the right bit in a minute. But I know what you mean. That's the thing, like I don't mind Benoit being in this position, but this really could have done with a 90-second, interview or video package or explanation, just explaining Benoit's motives, saying WCW are paying him a lot of money because they know he's faced and beat Jushin Liger before. Benoit's out here not because he wants Team WCW to win, but because he's going to get paid, say he's going to get paid $50,000 if he gets the job done. Give us a reason for Benoit to be out there that doesn't involve him being a de facto babyface. That being said, as I've said about 5 times on this show in the past, Japanese babyfaces have come in and have struggled in front of US crowds on first viewing because they don't know who they are. They don't particularly express themselves in a way that's appealing to the US audience. And I get the feeling that a lot of the fans in attendance just went, screw it. We're going to get 7 of these matches. We might as well cheer the guy we know. So we kind of got that. We also had this, it was a weird crowd. They were a crowd that were quite content to being quite quiet for large swathes of matches. And then they would just explode for a big moment. I mean, it's a bit more noticeable later on, but there was one in this match where Benoit got close and the crowd kind of came alive. And there's a moment later on where Luger locks in a torture rack and the place kind of, set on fire almost, which was weird. Wayne, your praise of the commentary is correct. I get the feeling that in about 20 minutes we're probably going to be doing the opposite of that, but we'll get to that in a minute. And the finish was basically, they wanted to protect Benoit, but they wanted WCW to lose the match. That was kind of it. But the match was excellent, I thought. Save a couple of sloppy moments. I'd say the Fatty Pat's going to be a bit longer. Benoit is an absolute, technician in the ring. He's so smooth, and Liger is pretty good. The finish wasn't ideal. I mean, when I say sloppy Hurricane Run, I mean, Liger basically lost it. He landed the move and then went to kind of hook Benoit's leg, and Benoit was in completely the wrong position. But he just about saved it. Yeah, they're very good opening match action. And yeah, as I say, New Japan go one down. Mean Gene Okerlund is backstage with Eddie Guerrero. Eddie is honoured to be selected for WCW's team tonight. See, that's like put Benoit on second, put him in there, and say, or put Benoit on third because Guerrero didn't come out second, and stick Mean Gene Okerlund in front of him. Okerlund can coax him through a promo and just say, "What are you doing here tonight?" Stuart, what do you think about that point of Benoit kind of preamble?
Yeah, I think that would have definitely helped, and it stands out even more later on when, spoilers, WCW win the World Cup, and you've got the other 6 guys there in WCW t-shirt celebrating, and then Benoit sort of stood off to the side in his Four Horsemen shirt. At least if you'd have created a reason as to why he wanted to A, be a part of it, and B, be part of the winning team, you might have had a reason to make him look less out of place in that closing ceremony.
What?
No, the same sentiment as Stewart there, really. You know, it's great that he's just touched on it, because I was going to do as well. But the fact that he would just come out in his Four Horsemen t-shirt, you know, he's still, that's how it should have been played. Is, you know, I'm not here for WCW. I'm here for the money. All I represent is Four Horsemen. That's all I'm here for, and we're getting the money. And obviously, it plays with how they've been in the past. You know, showing the money and Flair being flash with the cash, etc. So I think that's the way, like you guys say, that's the way that this should have gone with it.
Yeah, what wasn't a big deal, but it was enough to just grate at me a little bit, and I think had they not have done, we'll come to it when we get to it, but I think had they not have done the big in-ring celebration, it perhaps wouldn't have been such a big point, but it really stood out, but we'll get to that later on.
Sorry, Bob, you say it wasn't a big deal, but 3 of us here have all passed comment on it. So
no, I don't think it would have been a big deal had it not have stuck out so much later on. I think if it had just been Benoit in the opener, I don't think anyone would have been all none the wiser. But the fact it was, you know, they were trying to play it up as Team WCW, it kind of struggled. We move on to Koji Kanemoto with Sunny Ono versus Das Wunderkind. Alex Wright, he's back. I don't know where Alex Wright's been. We start with a loud USA chant, presumably for Nick Patrick. I don't know who else it could have been for. Kanemoto spins out of a headlock that's right, yeah, Team WCW, Team USA. We open up with a Canadian, then a German. Kanemoto spins out of a headlock into a leg sweep. Wright takes control with some arm wrenches, hits a pair of head scissors. He then hits a flying crossbody to the outside. Surprisingly, when referencing last year's Starrcade, Tony Schiavone references the debut of Randy Savage rather than the blockbuster main event of the Butcher taking on Hulk Hogan. Kanemoto hits some chops in the corner, then some kicks and a spinning wheel kick. He sends Wright tumbling to the outside, then nails him with a crossbody. Wright responds by slamming him into the guardrail. Kanemoto hits a lovely looking compact German suplex into a bridge pin, but Wright gets a foot on the ropes, and he then hits a moonsault but declines to pin Wright. Wright then hits what I suppose is a true German suplex, then goes for a Vader bomb, but Kanemoto gets his foot on the ropes. Wright goes for a high angle drop kick from the top. Kanemoto hits his own from the mat, and they both go down. Wright hits a crossbody from the top, but only gets a 2. Kanemoto hits a spin kick, a body slam, then hits a second rope corkscrew moonsault for a 2. Kanemoto jumps to the top. Wright drop kicks in, then goes to the top and hits a drop kick. I didn't realise how many drop kicks there were in this match. Wright hits a superplex for a 2. Kanemoto catches Wright on the ropes, drops him on the turnbuckle, British a pin, and gets the win. WCW go 2 down against New Japan Pro Wrestling. Stuart?
Yeah, more really, really good stuff. In terms of 2 opening matches to open a pay-per-view, certainly this year, I'd be hard-pressed to name 2 better across any promotion.
No, I think you're right. I think, you know, that WCW a lot of times have opened with a really hot opener and then followed it up with a really crap second match. Basically anything that's followed Johnny B. Bad or Brian Pillman. But yeah, they've got 4 really good wrestlers in the ring and they produced 2 pretty good matches.
Yeah, and Kanemoto, I thought, particularly of all the Japanese wrestlers, I mean, Liger's very established and, you know, for WCW fans even, they know who he is, but Kanemoto was an entirely new name, to myself and to a lot of the WCW fans, and I thought he really stood out here.
Yeah, any other thoughts on the match, Alex Wright in particular?
Yeah, I mean, he's been good this whole year. I think, obviously, he's just been the victim of the sort of booking change, and he was almost the sacrificial lamb as far as saying, you're a Flair guy, you're going to be sacrificed now. But, he certainly put in a decent showing.
Yeah, because they mentioned on commentary that Wright had been out to Japan when WCW kind of did this tour of Japan a few months back. So I suspect that was part of the reason why they put him out here, and just the thought that, he's quite a good worker. But, I think Wright might have surprised a lot of people with that performance. All right, in the ring was clearly a very able guy in Kanemoto, but the idea that Wright is, full of hot air, I think has been debunked with this performance.
No, I mean, I think we've always known that he's been a good worker. It's, was it, Great American Bash when he had the match with
Brian Pillman?
And they put on a barnstormer there as well. So, I think we've always known he like Stewart said, he's just been at the bad end of booking. And I think when Flair had the booking, he was in favour of him, and maybe he was going to do something with him. And then obviously Hogan come in, a lot of control got taken away, or he gave up on that control, Flair, and Alex Wright got the brunt end of it. So, you put him in with a good worker and you give him time. I think we'd always know that he was, we're going to get a good viewing out of him. Alex Wright, all good for me.
Thoughts on the match, right?
Yeah, sorry. It's, the matches, like Stewart says, Kanemoto, I wasn't, not established with myself, not seen that much, none of him really, and, I thought, he played a fantastic heel. Not only was I buying into it, but you could tell that the crowd was buying into it as well. Like the match, before it, it was fast paced and I really enjoyed it. And, it's funny that you should note it as well, because, I have it known now that Nashville, Tennessee will forever be known as Dropkick City, because I think there was about 6 or 7 altogether in the match. And coming to the finish, I know that we've spoke about it before. The finish, it was one of them that was out of nowhere, it works. If it's not overused and it's used to a lesser extent, then you can get something out of it, and that probably says something about Alex Wright as well, because he put on a great match, and it was just a finish out of nowhere, and what can be done about it. So the main thing about all of this is I come out of it wanting to see a lot more of Kanemoto. I thought he was fantastic.
Yeah, I wouldn't hold my breath on Kanemoto or Wright when it comes to exposure going into 1996, but yes, I certainly share the same sentiments. Match was very good. I can't really add anything more than either of you two have said, but Wright has improved a lot in the last 18 months. There's a perception that he's overpushed, and I think certainly to a degree that was true. But, they've got something here, and he's young enough. If Wright can get to the point where he can start leading people in good matches, they could have a real asset. Whether they're going to want to use it, as I say, Wright's kind of disappeared. I don't know whether he had an injury at one point. That could have been part of it. Anyway, so we move on. It's 2-0 to New Japan Pro Wrestling. Mean Gene Okerlund plugs a hotline story about, quote, an extraordinary amount of money being offered for a superstar, which I'm guessing was about the Ultimate Warrior going to the WWF. You could find out more about that on his hotline. Okerlund interviews Sunny Ono, who says he wants to buy WCW when New Japan wins this World Cup. Up third, it's Masahiro Chono with Sunny Ono versus Lex Luger with Jimmy Hart. The announcers start defending people, cheering WCW heels by saying people are here to see WCW win the cup. I'll give them that as a logical way out of it. Luger starts with a side headlock and a shoulder tackle before hitting a press slam. He then flexes and the crowd erupts. Chono sends Luger to the outside, then poses on the second rope. Luger runs Chono from turnbuckle to turnbuckle. Chono blocks a suplex and hits a snap suplex of his own. Schiavone. The USA chants start here in one of the great USA cities. Hayden. Where? Chono hits a reverse DDT, then sets for an STF, which looks like a vicious submission. Chono hits an atomic drop, then a Mafia kick. Dusty calls him out on the Mafia kick call. He and Rose rip Schiavone for that for the next few minutes, and really for the rest of the show with Schiavone's research was basically, fodder for mocking by his two commentary partners for the rest of the evening. Chono jumps from the top rope, Luger catches him with an uppercut. Luger then picks up Chono in the torch rack, the crowd explode, and Chono gives up, and it's WCW 1, New Japan 2. Wayne?
Yeah, the crowd definitely got the memo that I didn't, because when Lex come out and he's getting cheered, I'm thinking, why is this guy getting cheered? I don't understand it, but, Dusty pointed out that they're not here to, they're not here to cheer heels and faces. Well, he didn't go into too much detail. They're here to get behind WCW. So, fair enough. I'll give them that one. The match itself, obviously we touched on, Lex against Randy before, and Stewart pointed out, if you've got a motivated Lex Luger, then then we're going to get a good showing out of him. But it was a shame that we didn't get it here. I was really looking forward to seeing what Chono had, and he didn't really get to showcase his talents. And all in all, I just thought it was a predictable winner. And yeah, there we go.
Sure.
My overriding thoughts coming out of this match were more to do with the commentary than what was going in the ring, if I'm perfectly honest. So, Tony Schiavone has not always been someone who could claim to be the most well-researched announcer, and at the start of this show, it felt like he'd maybe made more of a concerted effort. Maybe it was after hearing Mike Tenay on Collision in Korea or something like that, but it doesn't help when he starts to display knowledge of some of these foreign wrestlers' moves, and instantly, and in fact remorselessly, gets ripped by Dusty Rhodes and Bobby Heenan for the rest of the show.
Yeah, it gets worse. I don't know if I put it in my notes later on, but he calls a German suplex in one of these matches. I may have it, but if I don't, I'll cover it here. Calls a German suplex. I think of all the moves in the wrestling vernacular, that's one of the safest ones. And then he goes, I'll give him this. It was fairly funny, but given the kind of barrage that Schiavone got for the rest of the show, it didn't quite stand out as well as it should. He goes, German suplex. Why don't we just call it a Yugoslavian suplex, which was something different at least. But yeah, you're right. Because I think it kind of started here and they were on him for the rest of the night. I think Schiavone just gave up. I think he just went, oh, screw it. There's not, I'm commentating to an audience of two and they're both ripping me for it. I'm not enjoying it. Stuart, thoughts on the match?
Yeah, about what you'd expect from a Lex Luger match. So what did it come in at? About 6 minutes or so?
That's about right.
That's probably about right for him. The difference between Lex Luger in WCW and WWF is very night and day. Now, he doesn't always turn up motivated, but you get the crowd reactions that he didn't get in the WWF. So that pop for the torture rack was something else.
Yeah, I'm struggling to explain it. I mean, it wasn't the only time the crowd exploded for a big finish, where other times it's a very bizarre crowd. Like their average was pretty flat, but there was Sting locking in the Scorpion, Deathlock later on, which the crowd came alive for too. But yeah, I think with Luger, it's also the part of things, Stuart, they're just giving him the chance. WWF, once they'd given up on him, gave up on him. WCW just keeps throwing him in big matches, and it's like, you'll get him more motivated at times than others, but if you give him enough shots in enough situations, he'll come through half the time.
Do you wonder with Luger and the heel turn that the problem is he turned on Hogan, who a lot of WCW audiences don't like?
There's a problem with that, as there is with Savage being aligned with Hogan, in that Savage isn't perhaps quite, I say aligned, Savage being perceived to be aligned with Hogan, Savage isn't quite getting the babyface reactions he would be doing otherwise. And equally the fact that Ric Flair, despite trying to play a heel, because he's WCW's guy, is getting a lot of a lot of cheers, and the fact that Luger used to be a WCW guy. There's a lot of things going on where this crowd, in parts, are a bit more, I would say, savvy. You don't need to be savvy to know that Lex Luger and Ric Flair have been around WCW a long time, if you can bridge the couple of years where Luger wasn't there. And Hogan and Savage haven't. But yeah, I think it's more of a point of there is a familiarity issue here, and that someone like Luger is getting that. And again, I get the feeling the crowd just decided we're going to cheer the guys we know. I think that was part of it too, in that I don't recall Luger getting when it was Flair, Luger and Sting later on, not that Luger got booed, but I don't recall him getting this big babyface pop. I think by that stage it was Luger in the ring with, guys who recognised more will cheer the others. But they just didn't recognise Chono, so they wouldn't. Stuart, any thoughts on any of that?
No, I'm good.
Wayne?
No, same here.
Okay, we'll move on. Oakland is backstage with Sting. He asks Sting about Sazaki, who beat him for the US title in Japan. Sting says the title is not the grabs, but pride is. Oakland asks Sting about Luger. Sting doesn't like the question, I'm not surprised. And he says he's got to do what he's got to do tonight. Next up, it's Johnny B. Bad with Kimberly versus Masa Saito with Sunny Ono. The Diamond Doll, now going by the name Kimberly, is dressed almost as a cheerleader. She's certainly acting like one. The dancing is on a par with Alex Wright, as I've got in my notes. Ono gets on the mic, says Kimberly should be at home cooking and doing the dishes. She says, if this sport is just for men, then what is he doing here? Ono tells Bad to control his woman. Wayne, this is different.
I'm definitely in love.
Okay, that wasn't the answer I was expecting, but carry on.
Yeah, it's not with Sunny Ono, right?
Well...
Well, no, definitely not. Kimberly, as soon as she did that cartwheel, I was the one head over heels, put it that way. She was, yeah.
Can we have a more objective response to that question, please, Wayne?
Sorry, so I've obviously lost my train of thought because I'm too busy thinking about Kimberly.
I said more objective. Carry on. Losing this show.
When you say this is different, are you on about her as a character?
Yes.
Yeah, right, okay, yes. What we're used to, she's obviously been put in a place a lot of times by DDP, and she's quite timid. Seems to do what she's told, even though she might come across that she's not agreeing with it. And now she's really come out of a shell. I think she fits well with Johnny B. Bad's character. I think they're both in the same in that sense. Overreactive, is quite responsive to the crowd, and it's different. It's totally opposite to what we've seen, but I'm all for it. A big thumbs up.
Stuart, your objective thoughts on this?
I'm less in love with Kimberly than Wayne is, but fair enough. I respect his choices. I don't think the pre-match thing did much for her in that. To say she had a heelish voice sounds harsh, I think, but she didn't necessarily endear herself to me as a babyface with this little speech. The question this also raises is, why does Sunny Ono keep going to the back and coming out again?
Because, I think he's their representative, isn't he? He's the manager of all the wrestlers. I guess, yeah, right, maybe you could stay out there, I suppose. But no, I think he's just their guy, isn't he? He's the guy who will, it's just someone to have at ringside. I think that made sense. I guess it was, to a point, there was some continuity for people watching at home, not they necessarily needed it. On the Kimberly thing, I don't necessarily dislike it, but Wayne, this feels like a 6-month transition in the space of 5 minutes.
Yeah, I think they just needed to just put it with Johnny B. Bad, and I think that's why it's rushed in that sense. Obviously it is very rushed, but Johnny B. Bad, he's got the title. He gets a good reaction from the crowd when he's coming out anyway. But I think it is what it is, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm intrigued to see what Darren Dallas Page does in response, let's say that. Saito looks like he's been skipping leg day every day of his life. He's got like a bodybuilding upper half and then like marathon runner's legs. Very, very odd look. He goes some chops, Bad fights back, they exchange slaps. Saito knocks Bad down with the right hand. Heenan says Saito has more US experience than many of the New Japan guys. He chokes Bad on the ropes. Ono does the same with the ref distracted. Bad hits a double axe handle from the top, then goes for a lovely float over sunset flip for the top for a 2. Bad gets annoyed by Ono, grabs on the apron, but the distraction costs him. Saito throws them both over the top, and Bad wins by disqualification. Yes, it's back. Bad returns to the ring, disposes of Saito, goes for a flip dive on the outside that basically misses. I'm not sure whether Saito deliberately did it or he just wasn't in the right place. Saito sells it anyway. Bad lands on his feet, returns to the ring, and celebrates with Kimberly. Stewart.
I thought this was the one sort of real styles clash of the night, in that Johnny B. Bad against a more athletic worker would have worked better. You know, Benoit got Liger, Guerrero got Otani, but Johnny B. Bad, who's been quite reliable for the majority of this year in terms of delivering quality matches.
I'd say he's been better than that, but yeah, carry on.
No, you're right. He's been good this year, and he gets put in the ring with a 50-odd-year-old bloke. Yeah,
Johnny Bad draw the short straw in the locker room pre-game selection. I think that's fair to say. Carol, shoot.
But yeah, and the finish kind of came out of nowhere. When was the last time they used this rule?
6 months ago, I think. I feel like I've ranted about it at some point this year, but it's been a while.
Yeah, it's not one that provides a satisfying finish. I don't know if it was just a political decision in that they needed WCW to win this bout, but maybe Saito didn't want to lose.
Yeah, that strikes me as about right. Just highly unsatisfying. Wayne?
No, I totally agree. I think the match itself, you know, we've just seen the same formula in the last 2 matches. Japanese beatdown, WCW comeback. I think the difference with this one though was when Johnny B. Bad was getting the beatdown. I didn't feel that the crowd was really behind Johnny B. Bad, either when he was getting beat down or when he come for his comeback. The rule of over the top is so ridiculous, and they do it when it suits. And you know, obviously, like Stewart just says, you know, I totally agree. I think it's been at the back, and you know, decision has been made. Right, okay, this is who's going to win, and you know, Saito's going to. Well, I'm not going to lose. So they've had to bring it in, which not a shame or anything, but it's either that or you know, they've got no faith in Johnny B. Bad to say, you know, this guy can actually go over Saito, because you know, he might have chicken legs, but the guy looks like an absolute brute. So, you know, maybe the fact of saying, right, well, there's no chance he could beat this guy. We're going to have to go with this way. Or, like you said, maybe it's a case of Saito in the back has said, I'm not losing, and they've said, right, well, this is the way that we're going to do it then. I wasn't all fair with them. I didn't really like it that much. Like I said, I think the crowd was dead, which probably made me feel more dead about it as well.
Yeah, if I'm Johnny B. Bad, and I've seen Benoit get Liger, and you know, Guerrero get Otani in a minute, and Alex Wright get, you know, Kanemoto, I'm a bit miffed that I got this, because I feel like Johnny Bad would have had a better match against even the guys, you know, even Chono and, you know, the Sting's opponent and Savage's opponent too. I feel like, you know, Bad could have got a good match out of any of those 3, and it just didn't work. Fortunately, it wasn't that long. But it wasn't even a match. I think the one thing you can say, it was never a match that attempted to be any good. You know, Saito was just having a standing brawl, and Bad was working backside off to try and get something out of it. Yeah, it was there. You know, of Johnny Bad's recent run of really good pay-per-view matches, this ain't one of them. Anyway, it's 2-2, WCW against New Japan. Mean Gene Okerlund is backstage with Lex Luger and Jimmy Hart. Hart says Sullivan has a short fuse. Luger flexes his pecs. Luger says he's going to get alone tonight in the triangle match, and Hart will not be by his side. I'm guessing that was so Hart could end up being with Flair in the main event. Yeah, I guess that all comes to that later on. Next up, it's Senjiro Otani versus Eddie Guerrero. Dusty calls this the pivotal match of the series. I think he means pivotal. Otani locks in a camel clutch face lock. Guerrero flips him out of it. Guerrero hits an enziguri. Otani tries for a Boston Crab, but he can't get Guerrero over. Guerrero slides out into a dominant position. Guerrero hits a lovely pop-up head scissors. Otani regroups with the owner on the outside. Guerrero follows that with a slingshot moonsault from the apron back into the ring, then into a Boston Crab. Guerrero hits a lovely powerbomb, pulls Otani into the pin for a 2. Guerrero hits a lovely brainbuster, again only for a 2 with Otani's foot on the ropes. Otani dodges a charge in the corner, hits a lovely high angle drop kick that connects so well that Guerrero goes flying across the ring and out of it. He then hits a somersault plancher to the outside. Guerrero fights out of some rest holds with a side suplex. Otani hits a German suplex but only gets a 2. Guerrero hits a Frankensteiner from the top but Otani kicks out. The crowd finally starts to rally behind Guerrero. Guerrero lifts Otani up into a razor's edge, then turns it into a sit-out powerbomb and still only gets a 2. Otani locks in a leg submission. Guerrero grabs the ropes but Otani keeps the hold in. Guerrero dumps Otani on the outside, then hits the springboard crossbody from the top rope to the outside on the R-way. Otani recovers, climbs to the apron, hits a springboard dropkick to the back of Guerrero's neck. Guerrero hits a Hurricane Rana. Otani rolls through into a pin. Guerrero rolls it. Otani rolls it and gets a pin for a very quick count from the ref. Again, I don't think that was a story. It was just happenstance. Wayne, what do you think of this?
I think it's safe to say that, in my opinion anyway, I've just watched Match of the Night. As soon as Eddie Guerrero was walking down, I just had a beaming smile on my face because I knew what I was going to be in for. And because of it, it was probably the last 2 matches were going to be wiped from my memory. But the biggest gripe about it all is I knew what the end result was going to be before it even started. If you think about it, we're now 2 for 2. We've got the world champ next, Randy Savage, who is also going to be in the main event defending, so it's safe to say that he's not going to lose. And then we've also got Sting after that, who's the number 1 babyface, and I think we can all agree that he's not going to lose. So I already knew that Guerrero was fighting a losing battle, which tainted it a little bit. But that being said, the match itself was brilliant. Just like Kanemoto, I thought Otani plays the dick heel, very well. Not knowing that much about him, I think it's safe to say that I'm probably going to, see, try and see a bit more of him as well. I'm not quite sure, unlike Benoit and Liger, you'll probably chirp up at this point. I'm not quite sure, but have these guys got a bit of history? Have they fought before?
I'd pass on that, Stewart. Anything?
Not that I'm aware of. No.
No, we'll have to plead the fifth on that one, Wayne. Sorry.
Okay. It's just because they mesh so well together. I thought they put on an absolute instant classic in my eyes, and apart from everything else I've just said, unlike you pros, I do actually make notes, but at this point I actually put my pen down and I actually sat back and enjoyed what I was in for. All in all, I thought it was great.
Unlike you pros, I do make notes.
Right, okay.
What do you mean to say there, Wayne? I've got tons of notes here. Anyway.
All right, sorry. Well, you're a pro who also takes notes then.
Yeah, I was what do you think I'm doing this from memory? All these match reviews? That'd be bloody impressive. I have a different career if I can remember all this a week after watching it. Anyway, Stewart.
Yeah, this was absolutely fantastic stuff. Similar to the Kanemoto Alex Wright match earlier in the night, Otani was not someone I was particularly familiar with, but as Wayne said, he would now be someone that I would go out of my way to go and watch some more of. Guerrero has been fantastic since joining WCW. Admittedly, they have put him in matches with people he's likely to have good matches with, but surely that is the object of wrestling. So putting Guerrero in there with the Benoits, the Milenkos, the JLs, the Alex Wrights of the world, you know what you're going to get. And Guerrero has spent extended amounts of time in Japan himself, so even if he hadn't wrestled Otani, he's going to be familiar with the style similar to Benoit. So, yeah, fantastic stuff, and I really like the finish in that, if I remember correctly, a lot of the Guerrero Melenko matches did this sequence, but rarely did it lead to the finish. So I kind of liked the sort of rolling pins ended in a 3 count.
Yeah, this was, well, the kind of the entire run in ECW of Guerrero Melenko was the idea that when they did have a decisive finish, it was always a very kind of marginal decisive finish. It was roll up, counter roll up, bit of fortune, bit of luck. So yeah, I think this was probably more of a feature of the early middle parts of the Guerrero Melenko matches when they did these kind of pin and counter pin. But yeah, there was certainly something to that. This match was really good. Otani looked like a star. Guerrero looked like a star. As Stewart says, if they haven't worked with each other before, it certainly didn't show. And the action was great. It was given long enough. The crowd got into it later on. Again, I think as much as I say with the Benoit thing, they just picked their guy. I think to a point, and some guys struggle this more than others, they don't really recognise Guerrero. Benoit's, I get the feeling to a point like being a heel in this situation is probably a bit more beneficial to getting positive crowd reaction than being a face, because the heel's on our side. It's like, well, we know he's a badass. Guerrero as the baby face is kind of, well, you got to earn our respect a bit more. So I think that played into it too. Really good match. Best match of the night. Again, it was like Benoit and Liger, had it had a few more minutes, had it been a bit more, more polished, could have been as good as this, but this was the extended version of that, and both guys shone, and I really kind of hope we get Otani back in future. I think of all of the, Stewart, of all the Japanese guys, is it fair to say Otani stood out the most?
Yes, I mean, I'd put Otani and Kanemoto on a par from the sense that I wasn't familiar with them, but maybe Otani just edging it.
Right?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think Otani and Kanemoto were the standouts for the Japanese side. If I just ask you a question though, if this was swapped with Alex Wright or the Benoit match, and we wasn't, I don't know. I'll ask that question as well. Was you going into it knowing that Guerrero was fighting a losing battle?
Yeah. Dave Meltzer did make reference in his review that there was the perception amongst a lot of people live in the building that there was no chance that Guerrero was going to win, because they knew Savage and Sting were coming. Sure. They knew it had to go to 4-3, and they knew neither of those guys were losing. So yeah, you're right in bringing that up. That was certainly a perception amongst X% of the audience.
So if you swap this match with the Benoit and Alex Wright and you're going into it not knowing what the end result is going to be, do you think that you would have probably give it a higher rating if you could go any higher than what you've probably already given it?
Stuart, I don't know about you. I know the affected mind during the match. I certainly wasn't sat there watching and thinking, okay, Guerrero's going to lose. How's it going to happen?
Yeah, I'd agree with you from the sense that wasn't in my mind when I was watching the match. I think if I'd have stopped and thought about it, I'd have probably realised, well, who's left to come out? Oh, it's Savage and Sting. So yeah, Guerrero is losing this one. But yeah, maybe I just kind of forgot that in my watching of the show, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, not to say you're wrong, Wayne, but I don't think it affected either of us. But Dave Meltzer pointed it out in his report. Some people in the building were clearly thinking that. Would it have made much difference going on earlier? Maybe, but equally, if you want to think about it like this, Luger ain't losing, Savage ain't losing, Sting ain't losing. So to a point that most of the other guys ain't going to win if you want to think about it that hard anyway. So I don't know that it would have made a massive amount of difference, and I don't know that many people are watching that match and going, well, it was a good match, but it would have been better if I thought Guerrero had a chance of winning. I think if you analyse wrestling on this level, you can, with a good degree of confidence, predict the result of probably 8 or 9 out of 10 matches, and it's like, I don't think that's a big enough factor for anyone, but not to say you're wrong. It just didn't affect us in this situation.
You said, maybe I just need not look into it too much.
Maybe you do. Yeah. We get a Randy Savage promo with Oakland. He calls this a moment in time. Oakland says the suspended Hulk Hogan asked him what state of mind he was in. He says he's in the zone. He then asked Sting to be there for USA, which, come to think of it, given that a Canadian's lost, a German's lost, Eddie Guerrero, while American, is is very much based on his Mexican heritage and given how much he's wrestled there. They've all lost, and the 2 Americans so far have won. Maybe Savage asking Sting to be there for the USA wasn't such a bad idea at all. Next up, it's Tenzan with Sunny Ono versus the Macho Man Randy Savage. The crowd come alive for Savage. Tenzan starts with a beatdown of Savage. Stewart, Adam on your show is a very big fan of mullets. This was something else.
Tenzan's mullet is notable for many reasons, and yes, Adam has commented on it before, how fantastic it is. It's 1995 and he's still parading around like it's 1985.
Yeah, I mean, like, really, really crew cut, and then just a big long mullet at the back. Like, no, there was no transition here, there was no progression. Just, like, if you're a fan of mullets, like, Tenzan I would put right near the top. Anyway, after a good minute or two of that, Savage finally begins to fight back, but Tenzan no-sells the attack. Tenzan locks in a shoulder and nerve hold, Savage fights out by grabbing his nose. Tenzan hits a spinning wheel kick, which lands hard. On the outside, Tenzan drops Savage on the guardrail, then hits a modified Samoan drop and a diving headbutt from the second rope. Tenzan goes for a moonsault, Savage moves, then clotheslines him on the apron. Savage hits an apron suplex, sort of. He then drops Tenzan awkwardly on the rope. Savage goes for the top, drops an elbow, and wins the match. The crowd pop big. Stuart?
Yeah, I thought this was okay, given the fact that Savage is clearly injured. It makes me wonder why they're putting him in a situation where he needs to be wrestling 2 matches in one night.
Or even one.
Or even one, yes, when it's clear he's injured. It's been clear for a couple of months that he's injured. Despite Hulk Hogan's assertions at the start of World War III, he is injured. His arm is heavily taped.
They say that on Nitro too. Like, you know,
yeah.
I don't know. The WCW timeline for 1995 is easier to understand if you ignore the 3-minute Hogan promo at the start of World War III. It all makes a lot more sense.
But yeah, I thought it was decent. And Tenzan, hair included, has a great look. That the mask that he comes out in is quite cool. And you know, if one criticism could be levelled at the Otanis and the Kanemotos that appear on this show, they haven't got much going for them visually. Otani, other than the fact he doesn't have knee pads and that looks weird. But Tenzan, with his outfit when he comes out, looks like a star in the same way that, say, Liger does.
Why?
Yeah, I mean, it was an okay match. I just don't understand the booking altogether. Like you said, one match is probably one match too many, but to have 2 matches, you've got so many other guys on the roster that you could probably bring in. Milenko, a Giant, and there's many others as well that you could have just had in instead of Lex and also instead of Macho Man, and obviously I think we can understand why Sting is on there against.
Yeah, I think just to jump in quickly, Wayne, I'll come back to you in a sec. I think the idea originally was that the entirety of the pay-per-view was just going to be 7 matches. There weren't going to be the triangle match or title match. They kind of added that in. I'm not quite sure why. I guess maybe they just thought, crap, nobody's going to buy the show unless we give them something to buy it for, which is more their own fault for not building it properly, the rest of it. But I think essentially, and this doesn't quite hold up given that Flair didn't wrestle in the first 7, but I think the idea to a point was, and maybe Flair didn't wrestle in the first 7 because they didn't want to have Flair wrestling 3 matches in one night. But once they had Sting in this one and in a triangle match, and Luger in this one and in a triangle match, they thought, we better even up the odds to have Savage wrestle twice. I think that was the logic, because I don't think they did a particularly good job in telling that story or even executing it very well. But yeah, that was certainly the bit I can say is true was that the part of the title match was added fairly late, like within a few weeks. So carry on, Wayne.
Right, yeah, well, probably explains a little bit then, but, going on the match, as I said, it was okay. You would probably expect more from a Savage match, but he's injured, so that probably explains it a little bit in that sense. But if there's any wrestling fans out there who want to have a look at, a formula of a beatdown and a comeback, I think this is the perfect match for it, because I think that's all what happened. It really, in my eyes, I thought it was a match that really put Tenzan over. Although he didn't get the win, I thought it put him over, that this guy was, beating down the champion of WCW. So, in that sense, it probably did what it needed to do for that. The conclusion that I got from it was, I know Macho Man's injured, but I'm trying to think back. We had an okay match with Lex Luger that went for a lengthy time, but I'm going back now and I'm thinking, have we seen, a classic from him? Does he warrant being the champion, apart from being the name that he is? And
Savage and Flair in June was really good.
Well, I always love it when you correct me.
Admittedly, that's like the one WCW pay-per-view I don't think you reviewed this year, so I'll half let you off. But yeah, no, your wider point, I think it has some merit to it, though, in that the batting average of Savage's matches this year haven't always been that great. There are exceptions, and he's been working the last few months injured. But yeah, like, him being world champion, I mean, the alternative was Hogan, who's not exactly had many classics this year himself. But yeah, I think there's a Randy Savage Ric Flair match from the Great American Bash show that begs to differ.
Well, I'll go back and I'll give my opinion on that one then.
We've got you're on our end of year awards show, so you check that match out before we get to the show. You may have a different opinion when it comes to match of the year. Yeah, this was Tenzan kind of on top for about 5.5 minutes, and then Savage came back and won. I don't think this match was all that good. Tenzan looked good. I don't think he looked great. Savage, if nothing else, can sell even while he's injured, so yeah, it was okay, but it was never really long enough to get any good. And yeah, the flip side of the question about Guerrero is there was never any doubt that Savage was going to win. So I feel like this affected people's perception of this match more than the previous one. Once WCW were 3-2 down, like it's always going to go 3-3. It's wrestling. It's like the heels winning the coin toss at War Games. It's always going to go 3-3. You might as well not have this match. So, that perhaps affected it too. It wasn't long enough to be any good, nor I think was it good enough to be any good either. Heenan starts losing his bearings at the announcer's table, quite comically. Oakland says there is a gigantic meltdown in the world of professional wrestling, but not necessarily here in WCW, somewhere else. Well, that's one way of trying to shield your hotline without mentioning the name WWF, but anyway, I don't know. Yes, I'm not particularly sure what he's even on about. Unless it was a hook for the flip side of the Alundra Blayze thing. That was a week earlier. I don't know. Maybe not. Who knows? So we'll cover it in January if we find out. Flair joins Oakland. Flair says he's fresh and he knows beyond a shadow of a doubt that he will win the World Heavyweight Championship. Next up, it's Kazuki Sazaki with Sunny Ono versus Sting in a match that is not for the WCW United States title. They have, of course, it's 3-3, so this is the deciding match in the World Cup tournament. They have the trophy on a plinth in the R-Way. Sting carries the American flag high and gets a big amount of pyro. And he's right to. The Americans are winning all these matches and the non-Americans aren't. So, Sazaki fires Sting across opposing turnbuckles. Sting goes for a splash. Schiavone says already. Sazaki follows Sting off the ropes and hits a bulldog. Sting retaliates with a dropkick, sends Sazaki over the top rope and does not get disqualified. Yes, WCW logic for you. Sting walks into a power slam. Sazaki locks in an arm submission, then hits an arm drag takeover. Sazaki then gets Sting in the Scorpion Deathlock. There is an amazing lack of heat for the big babyface being put in his own move, or so I've put. The fans rally eventually with a USA chant. Sting buys some time, then ends a Guri. He then drops him on the top turnbuckle, kicks him, and hits a bulldog. Sting locks in the Scorpion Deathlock and the crowd come unglued. Sazaki rallies, but Sting pulls him back into the middle of the ring. He holds on for a while, but eventually passes out. Sting wins and the crowd pop big. The babyfaces who are part of the tournament celebrate in the ring with Sting. Luger and Benoit do join them in a minute, and we'll come to that segment in a few minutes. Wayne, what do you think of this match?
For the final match of the best of 7, I thought it could have been a bit better. I don't know if if it had anything to do with what had happened with obviously the US title, or the shenanigans of that, or if there was anything back, but it just didn't seem like both of them was
possible. Sting was pacing himself. Why? He's got a 20-minute match to come.
Yeah, I suppose in that sense. But I am expecting better from Sting. I mean, if this guy can get a good match out of Avalanche, then I'd expect him to get a good match out of anybody, really. And but it wasn't to be. I, like you, was really surprised that the crowd wasn't hotter. The fact that the deathlock from Sazaki was put on Sting, but maybe it's the fact that they don't know who this guy is. I'm trying to obviously look at reason for it, but they don't know.
Well, maybe they just thought he's not going to win. Maybe that was it too.
Yeah, true. Like I said before, what do we know? It's a WCW triumph.
Yeah, Stewart.
Yeah, this was about average. I mean, athletically, it was never going to be on the level of Otani, Guerrero, or Benoit Liger, or Kanemoto, Alex Wright, but it certainly didn't plumb the depths of Luger or the Johnny V. Bad match. So it probably sits somewhere in the middle in terms of all the tournament matches. I think, maybe the lack of crowd reaction for Sting going into the Scorpion was due to the fact that the crowd just naturally assumed Sting was going to win. There was, they perhaps didn't feel there was any real cause to think WCW would lose the whole thing.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't disagree with that. And as I say, I think that, in terms of the match quality, maybe Wayne's right. Maybe there was some, underlying, discontent with what happened with the US title. But I think it's just more that Sting's got to, keep himself relatively fresh for the match he's got coming next. Didn't want to try too much. Didn't want to be too long. Let's not spend any time the over the top rope disqualification thing. I'm bored with the topic now, really. The WCW's random application of it. And then we get to the celebration.
All right, gentlemen, I thank you very much. This has got to be truly one of the most historic evenings I can recall in the ranks of professional wrestling. Here in Nashville, Tennessee, tonight, in front of this capacity crowd, the chant of USA, USA, and WCW as WCW wins 4-3 the World Cup of Wrestling. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for these men. Sting, Chris Benoit, the total package, Lex Luger, Alex Wright, Johnny B. Bad, and Eddie Guerrero. Gentlemen, I want you to take this cup, and tonight, somewhere in this great city, we can sip champagne and be proud of World Championship Wrestling and this great sport. Fill her up, gentlemen. Fill her up. Sting, I've got to tell you, this crowd electrified, and you certainly excited them in this final match of the international competition. You've still got some work to do.
I sure do, but I just got one thing to say. USA!
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to say I hope this becomes a tradition at Starrcade, because certainly this is one of the most prestigious international events, like the Ryder Cup in golf, like the Stanley Cup in hockey, like the World Series itself. Truly, this is a memorable moment for these 7 men. Tony, Bobby Heenan, and the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, you can really appreciate this. Gentlemen, let's get back to you.
Mean Gene Okerlund is in the ring. Savage has disappeared, but Luger and Benoit are out in the ring. Everyone apart from Benoit is wearing tournament t-shirts. Sting has one thing left to say: USA. Yes, with a German and a Canadian in the ring. Stuart, again, we did touch on it earlier, but I think now's the time to do it justice. Benoit and to a degree Luger looked quite uncomfortable in the segment, and I'm not sure you can blame them.
No, I mean, I guess with Luger, you could almost justify him being there in the sense that, the big storyline is that him and Sting are pals, so you can just about get away with that. But yeah, Benoit certainly stood on the left of the ring, looked the most awkward of the lot, and I wonder if that's from the perspective of that he knows he's just supposed to have turned heel and be part of this big heel faction, but he's been asked to go and celebrate with a bunch of baby faces, so you can understand the awkwardness. And I don't know if you clocked it, but right at the very end, as the shot went somewhere else, Sting and Benoit did sort of either high five or slap hands or something, and that, being pedantic romantic, but it made me sort of groan from the perspective that they're the group that formed turning heel on Sting.
Yeah, I didn't see that, I must admit.
That just shouldn't be happening. That is an oversight of, above all oversights in terms of, if you're attempting to tell a cohesive story, having the group that formed to violently take out one of your key baby faces, even if they are celebrating winning this tournament, he shouldn't be celebrating with Benoit.
Yeah, it's just awkward, Wayne.
No, I got that as well. I just didn't understand some of the celebrations that were going on. Yeah, like you said, you can probably understand with Luger, but Benoit being there, I just didn't understand it at all. And obviously that goes back to what we've already said before. That they should have told a better story with him. But I like the fact that he come out in the Four Horsemen t-shirt. I absolutely love that because. I
don't think he had a choice, did he? I think he had to do something to differentiate himself from the group. It would have been awful if he'd have been stood there in a Team WCW shirt. I think we could all agree on that.
Yes, and that's what I mean. That's why I really loved the fact that he come out in a Four, because it put that twist on it that right, okay, well, maybe he is for them. I just thought he could have told a better story beforehand, but Sting doing his babyface promo, getting ready for the next match is probably just there to obviously build him up as well.
Yeah, but I did like the fact that, if you're going to try and make this a big deal, if you're going to try and do this again next year, and there are certainly indications that WCW want to do that, nice big trophy, celebration, again, I don't mind Benoit being in it. Just explain why. I think Benoit, given his experience with the Japanese talent, makes a lot of sense. And play that up. Just say, look, WCW picked Benoit for all the reasons that Benoit is under contract on our roster. You may not like him, but we want to win this, right? Friend or foe. Benoit, we are paying him money to be in this and help us win it. That was all the kind of explanation you need. Or let Benoit cut a promo and say, look, this is an ego thing. Or say, I've got history with Liger, I need to get my win back. I don't care about Team WCW, but if me winning helps them along, then alright. It wasn't the fact, I don't have a problem with it, he was there. Just tell me why. That was the thing they were missing, and it didn't help here. I think, I suppose to a point it messed it up more if he wasn't out there for the celebration. But maybe tease some discontent. Maybe, almost have him leg it with a trophy, and I suppose he did lose. But that kind of thing. Maybe do that. I don't know. But yeah, there were a lot of things they could have done just to plug the gaps in this. I would have liked it if they had have done.
Can we just touch upon one tiny more bit of awkwardness?
Go on.
Alex Wright having to sort of relay or rein in his celebration when USA chants started.
Yes. Maybe he's an adopted American. Yeah, but again, if you want to tell stories, have Alex Wright get his nationality papers the week before. I'm putting way more thought into this than they are, but that's the kind of thing where, again, say Wright has lived in America for the last 2 years, which I think is true. He may be German by birth, but he's working towards American nationalisation. And for all intents and purposes, tonight he's on Team USA. Do that. Give me that explanation and I'll go with it. Wrestling doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be detailed. It just needs to be something. But yeah, you're right. Team USA with a German, a Canadian, and Eddie Guerrero, who, while born in Texas, I think a lot of people might think is Mexican. Not ideal. He looks absolutely distraught at commentary and says, so I have to give the Lexus back? Yes, Bobby, you do. They explain the triangle match will involve all three men in the match at the same time, which does differ from the triangle match last year between Sting, Vader, and I think it was Guardian Angel. I'm pretty sure it was Ray Traynor. I'm not sure what gimmick he was playing.
I think he was the boss, wasn't he, at that point? Was he?
I had it down as being
Big Bubba.
No.
Big Bubba was earlier on this year, I'm sure it was. I think
it was Guardian Angel. I may be wrong, because I've got a feeling the triangle match was September, October, August. Anyway, whatever. Whatever. That match was Sting against Ray Traylor, and then Sting won that, and then they did Sting and Vader, and then that happened for a while, and then Vader won for a screw finish, whatever. But that was 2 separate matches as part of a triangle match. This was a triangle match that involved 2 men in the ring and a third man on the outside, as if he was in a tag match, and you can tag in and out. It's Lex Luger versus Sting versus Ric Flair in a triangle match, with the winner facing Randy Savage in the main event for the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. Flair offers Luger a handshake. Luger rejects. Luger wins the toss. There was one, and starts on the outside, and it's Flair against Sting. We start with a howl off from Flair and Sting. Sting gorilla press slams Flair, then levels him with a clothesline. Sting goes straight for the Scorpion Deathlock. Flair desperately grabs the ropes, then regroups on the floor. Flair chops Sting, then floors him with a right hand. Flair chops Sting, but that only fires him up. He goes for an arm drag, a drop kick, and a gorilla press slam. Then a 10 punch for biting Flair's forehead. Flair retreats to the floor. Sting follows him, but Flair sends him into the guardrail. Back in the ring, Sting goes for a drop kick, but Flair moves. Flair goads Luger. Luger charges into the ring. The ref stops him. Flair sends Sting over the top rope. No disqualification. Flair keeps pinning Sting, who keeps kicking out. Flair hits a suplex, but Sting no-sells it. Sting sets him on the top rope, but Flair rakes the eye. Sting hits another gorilla press slam, then a superplex. Sting goes for a pin on Flair, but Luger steps in to break it up. Sting stands up and says, "What are you doing?" Flair drives Sting into Luger, who tags himself in. Again, one thing I'm not sure they ever explained was whether this was elimination or not. Given it was a finish, given what happened with the finish, I'm not sure they ever did either. Flair drives, what are you doing? Flair drives Sting into Luger, who tags himself in. Luger flexes. Flair legs it up the R-way. Luger brings him back into the ring. Flair keeps attacking Luger, who keeps fighting him off. Flair takes his 4th gorilla press slam of the match. On the gorilla name, Heenan says, "Are you going to start naming animals now?" Yeah, again, more kind of banter with Schiavone that, Stewart's rightly grown. Luger hits a 10 punch. Flair collapses Flair style. Flair pokes Luger in the eye, then takes some time to recover. Flair drapes Luger on the apron, then hits him with a padded chair in the knee. Sting had the ref distracted, it seems. Credit, what I remember, for Flair using the padded side of the chair while still doing some damage, didn't actually make any noise. I thought that was quite a nice attention to detail. Flair sets to work on Luger's leg. Flair goads Sting before driving his knee into Luger's crotch, with Sting distracting the ref. Heenan said he must have lost his balance. Flair locks in the figure 4 again, grabs the ropes where the ref isn't looking. This irate Sting on the apron. Luger's up, I guess we can call it that. Turning over the figure 4, Luger covers Flair, who barely kicks out. Flair goes to the top, gets press slammed again. Flair chops Luger, who no-sells. He's Lugering up. I might be calling a phrase here. Flair indicates he wants Sting and Luger to go at it. Flair tags himself out. Sting offers up a handshake. Luger accepts. That gets a lot of boos. Sting goes for a 10 punch on Luger. Luger catches him halfway, hits an atomic drop. Sting levels him with multiple clotheslines. Luger begs off in the corner. Luger drives his shoulders into Sting in the corner, but runs into a boot. Luger drops Sting on the top rope, then steps on his throat. Sting climbs to the top, hits a crossbody for a 2. Sting goes to the top for a Vader bomb, but Luger gets his knees up. Luger low blows Sting after grabbing the ropes in a Scorpion Deathlock. Heenan calls it reflexes. Sting hits a sunset flip for a 2, then a bulldog. Sting goes for an Irish whip, Luger, but changes direction so it's not into Flair's corner. Luger gets Sting in the torture rack. Sting inadvertently kicks the ref. Flair takes Luger down by the knee, throws both guys to the outside. Nick Patrick comes around. There's a really fast 10 count. Sting rallies at 8 on the outside, but Luger grabs his arm and stops him, and Flair wins by double count out in a 3-way match. Stuart, what do you think?
I know these are 3 of your biggest stars, 3 of the top 5, shall we say, but this match went on far, far too long. I thought the opening segment with Sting and Flair was fine, but similar to kind of their match, I think it was last month. It very much felt like a greatest hits. It was them just doing their spots that they usually do. I thought Sting and Luger against each other killed the crowd dead. For whatever reason, that was just not something they wanted to see. I think that from the handshake onwards, they just weren't interested in that as a pairing. So I don't know whether that suggests they do want them, the crowd do want them as a team, or they don't. And yeah, the finish, double count out in a 3-way match.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as a question, what's the storyline explanation for why Flair wasn't part of the World Cup? Because theoretically, if Luger or Sting had won this match, they would have wrestled 3 times. I know the reason is they didn't want Flair to wrestle 3 times, but surely his stakes in the evening should have been the same as the other 2. Surely he clearly has an advantage going into this match, having not wrestled as part of the World Cup.
That would be a part of the storyline that if WCW were actually bothered in building the selection of Team WCW, they may have addressed, but given that they didn't, they didn't. And so yeah, it kind of just didn't happen. Again, like, what we talk about this tournament, like, it was a nice tournament, but fill in some of the gaps, guys, you know, like, and more the point that if Luger and Sting and Savage are available, why isn't Flair? Like, if you're WCW management picking your squad, like, Flair's number 1 on my list.
Plus Benoit's part of that team, so, you know, he's affiliated with Flair. Surely Flair would be available also if Benoit was available.
Yeah, again, maybe you could say we approach, not a simple answer, an answer, we approached Flair, he wanted too much money. That could be it. Yeah, again, like, I'm doing WCW's thinking for him. Wayne, your thoughts on this match?
Yeah, I mean, I'll disagree with Stewart a little. I think, you know, if it was, you know, a one-on-one, then maybe it probably did go on too long, but I didn't mind the length of the match. I thought it was good to see the interaction of all parties against each other. The concept itself was a little confusing. I just thought it'd just be easy just to have them in all at the same time. And I was like you, they didn't explain if it was elimination or not. I kind of come to my own conclusion when Luger did the breakup of the pin, but before that I was thinking, right, okay, maybe if one of them loses, is it Luger against another? But the face off from Sting, I think it was Brian from WCW Worldwide that said it a couple of months ago when we was on the show together, that once you've seen Sting and Flair go at it, you know, you've seen it all, and you know, I'll agree with him. You know, them two, what you get is what you get. But,
we've seen it about 3 times since he said that.
Well, yeah, you're quite right, but I don't know what it is about them. I always get sucked in. You know, just like Halloween Havoc, I was on the edge of my seat with them, especially when Sting started to do the strut back at Flair. You know, I actually give a pop myself for that one. As soon as Luger comes in, I was quite. I didn't look at it as that the crowd didn't want Sting and Luger to go at it. I thought, I was just more confused at the fact that we had Luger who was face earlier on in the night. Luger comes in, he's a heel against Sting, and then he goes back to a face when he's against Flair. You know, I was a little confused and taken back by that. And Luger himself, I'm confused by his character, not just on this pay-per-view or in these set of matches, but he's a heel, but he's got face moves. He does heel taunts, but he does a face comeback. So I don't know what, you know, if that's his character set or what. But I did like the planting more seeds of doubt between Luger and Sting, though. I couldn't understand why he did the pin breakup and the blind tag. You know, that goes with the concepts of the match. But again, you know, Sting questioning him, like, you know, what you're doing. But more than anything, it was the holding of the arm. Not to let Sting back in. I think that's where we're probably going to get something off the back of it. And unlike what Stewart says, I'd probably like to see where they go with it, and not that Stewart didn't say that, sorry, I'm just on about what he said about the crowd. You know, I think we'd probably like to see where where they take it.
Yeah, Stewart, I mean, this is beginning to feel a little bit like 1, 2, 3 Kid and Razor Ramon. It's like, okay, it's a different way of telling a story, having this kind of on again, off again, friendship, rivalry, all of that. But and it's a bit easy to say that wrestling isn't as nuanced that it couldn't carry a storyline this. But I'm waiting for you to make a decision on whether I'm meant to like Lex Luger or not. And I don't know that I'm going to care in 3 months' time if you're still doing it.
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly the point I was going to raise if you'd not brought it up. Do you think WCW are attempting to deliver a more nuanced storyline in terms of where they're taking Luger's allegiances? Or do you think it's a case of they can't actually decide? They can't quite decide whether he fits in better as a face or a heel, and they plan on spending the next few months, at the Nitros, at the pay-per-views, working out whether crowds want him on one side of the fence or the other, and that's what they'll go with.
I don't know. WCW don't have a long enough, consistent enough track record where I think I can honestly predict where they're going to go with something as potentially nuanced as this. But again, I don't mind the kind of story, but it's just like having seen 4 weeks of Nitro where it's constant questions of Sting. I think we're all getting tired of that. So it's like, you don't necessarily have to take this in a black and white direction. But let's get to the next chapter of this story, whatever that may be. Even if it is them kind of still doing this on again, off again thing, it's got to go somewhere. You can't just keep having this, are they friends, are they not? You've got to have a reason for it being, maybe they split apart, but they have a reason, a common enemy. If you want to do it like this, almost have Sting and Luger break apart, but then Luger gets into it with the Four Horsemen, and so there is rationale for doing Luger and Sting against Anderson and Flair at one of the pay-per-views next year. Do it tell me a story like that. Don't keep this whole kind of we're not going to commit to anything type thing. I don't know. As for the match, 28 minutes was too long, but while Flair was in the ring, I was really into it. Once Flair tagged out, it flattened out. I think so did the crowd. But then again, we'd seen both Sting and Luger Sting for about 25 minutes up until this point, Luger for a good 10, 15. Again, if we're going to talk about a crowd that's smart enough to imagine what might come next, there is always the thought, 3 big WCW names, they ain't going to deliver us a clean finish. And Stewart, the finish we got, even I didn't think we were necessarily going to get something this bad.
Yeah, you just get the impression it's another one of those situations where they didn't want anyone taking the pin, they didn't want anyone taking a submission loss, so they went with what perhaps on the surface feels like the easiest option, but from a viewer standpoint feels like the biggest cop-out possible.
Wayne?
No, yeah, agree. I think it was cop-out. It was to give Flair the win and, not have Sting or Luger to take a loss, considering they're both main eventers as well. And also the fact that, as I said before, it's edging that storyline of these two, of Luger and Sting finally gonna, go in a feud.
Wayne, I kind of, I guess I should be smarter to realise that any company that Hulk Hogan is in isn't going to easily, if at all, allow a guy as popular as Sting, more popular than he is, to get the big win. But I kind of felt like this should have been Sting's night. It's the kind of thing where I would have just had him tap Flair out, beat Savage, and have the big fucking coronation for all of the reasons against it. If I come back to this before, Hulk Hogan wants to make money, pick the big money matches. Pick Sting selfishly if you like. If you're picking Sting on the basis I can make more money out of Sting in 96 than I can feuding with anyone else, great. But wait, part of me, I shouldn't be surprised, part of me is really disappointed that they didn't just make Sting tonight, because I felt like this was the night to do it.
Yeah, well, I was going to touch on it in at the end, but it goes hand in hand with what you're saying. If I could guarantee you that if this was WWF, Sting would be getting the coronation that he deserves at the end of it.
I wouldn't guarantee it, but yeah, I think.
Really?
Oh, guarantee. I'm not.
Biggest pay-per-view of the year. If this was WrestleMania and Sting was the number one babyface.
If Hogan was still around.
He's still around, but he's not on this show. They're not going to, they're probably not going to be doing anything with him for the foreseeable. So if you need your number one to be going over, if it was WWF and it was WrestleMania, Sting would be going over. You say you can't guarantee it, but the chances are very, very high.
Stuart?
Yeah, I think I'd agree with Wayne from the perspective that, you perhaps had a situation here where you could have created a WrestleMania 10 moment for Sting rather than a WrestleMania 9 moment, but I guess Hogan's overbearing presence is the reason it didn't happen. Does Hogan think he can make money in a feud with Sting? Maybe he doesn't. Maybe maybe he just thinks that it's too risky in terms of I'd be willing to lay a sizable bet that in 80% of towns WCW go to, Sting would be more popular, and he wants to avoid that at all costs. So, and I even think that with Savage as well, that Savage would be more popular in a lot of places than Hogan, because although they're aligned on and off on screen, I think Savage has more equity with the WCW audience than Hogan does. So, I mean, this we'll get into it when we discuss the main event, but yeah, this felt like a very transparent attempt to get the belt off of Savage onto Flair so Hogan could beat Flair.
Yeah. I would have, as I said, I would have just made Sting and worked out the details later. There's, sometimes it's far harder and far more difficult to fight something like that than it is just to do it and work out the fine print later. Just make Sting and then just work it out. As I say, Hogan might make less merch sales if he's alongside Sting, but it's like he's getting a cut of the pay-per-views. I know if I'm Hulk Hogan and I want to keep my bank balance as high as possible, Sting's the guy to do it with. It's, I don't know, maybe there is something to say, well, if I do it with Sting, Sting becomes the top guy and then I'm not, and then I lose leverage. I suppose, just the depressing thing about, following WCW is that all roads lead back to Hogan, and at times those roads seem to be travelling in the wrong direction. Jimmy Hart comes out and has words with Flair. Hart is in Flair's corner, and we're basically straight into the main event. It's Randy Savage against Ric Flair, sort of with Jimmy Hart for the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. Michael Buffer is on the announcement. Schiavone somewhat preposterously asks if Ric Flair has ever wrestled twice in a row. I find it impossible to believe he hasn't in his 25-year career. Savage starts with a backslide for a 2. Savage starts throwing some shots. Mr. Wonderful comes onto the R-Way in a neck brace. Flair attempts a figure 4, but Savage drives him off. Flair does the Flair flip on the outside. Savage does a double axe handle to the floor, but Flair catches him. On the R-Way, Doug Dillinger calms Orndorff down. Flair returns to the ring, and with the ref distracted, Hart charges at Savage and kicks him in the midriff. Flair starts working Savage's injured arm. This lasts for a while. Savage rallies to a surprising lack of crowd reaction. Savage climbs to the top. Flair cuts off another axe handle. Hart manages to chuck the megaphone to Ric Flair while distracting the ref. Savage gets in a shot with the megaphone. Flair immediately starts bleeding heavily. Looks like Savage cut him, or at least opened up a wound that Flair had prepared. Savage drops the elbow. Pillman jumps on the turnbuckle. Savage throws Pillman at Benoit. Flair is gushing blood. Arn Anderson comes out, levels Savage. In all this time, Hart has kept the ref distracted for a good 30 seconds. Anderson levels Savage right by the referee. A bloody pair, Flair pins Savage and wins the WCW World Heavyweight title. The crowd popped big for the title change, and Flair, in about a minute and a half, is covered in blood. And the attack on Savage continues after the match. Wayne?
It was a good match. Maybe I'm being a bit too adventurous saying that, but it could have been a lot better if Savage wasn't injured. I think we can all agree on that. a few questions though. Why is Jimmy Hart there?
I think for the finish is the simple answer. In that Dave Meltzer speculated on that, and he just said they probably put Savage with Flair on the basis that they didn't trust anyone else to be able to pull off this kind of lengthy distraction on the ref. There's nobody else, so they just put him with that. I'm not sure why it couldn't have been Arn Anderson. That would have made a lot more sense. I guess they maybe needed Anderson involved in the finish, but yeah, that explains that one.
I just didn't understand it. You know, we've got the Horsemen and Dungeon of Doom feuding, but yet we've got Jimmy Hart at ringside for the Four Horsemen, or for Flair anyway. So, you know, why is Jimmy Hart there? And you know, also, did I really see Randy Savage blade Flair?
I think you did.
I think I did. And then also, why is Jimmy Hart still there? They're my notes for this, because
still, alright, fair enough.
Still, why is he still there? Because you know, I was just so confused by it, and he was there right to the end. And I think it's fair to say that Ric Flair is no longer the dirtiest player in the game. He's now the bloodiest player in the game.
Yes, Stewart.
Yeah, I thought this was kind of more angle than match, really. Like you two, the whole Jimmy Hart thing didn't make any sense from the perspective of the Horsemen are supposedly feuding with the Dungeon of Doom. In fact, earlier in the show, we had a member of the Dungeon of Doom come out to distract a Horseman, yet Hart, who is aligned with Luger, who is sort of a face but also sort of a heel, but he's also aligned with the Dungeon of Doom, but he's now going to be aligned with Flair, who his other stablemates are feuding with. It's a very complicated plotting
That's
game.
the most confusing sentence I've ever heard. First ever line on this podcast, I might have to draw out in a diagram, but yeah, carry on.
I was doing that in the air with my fingers, trying to plot them all sort of together. But that is the situation that's going on. I presume Flair's absolutely gushing blade job was in reaction to Bret Hart's last week. I think it was a case of anything you can do. Yeah, anything you can do, we can do better. And depends on your definition of the word better, but he certainly bled more.
I don't know that I want to be in the game of comparing blade jobs. But you're right, Stuart. This was more of an angle than a match. This is the second time we've seen Flair, who'd wrestled for the better part of 15-20 minutes, just before this. Second time we've seen Savage, who'd already wrestled tonight and is injured. The match between these two was not a job. I referenced earlier their match at the Great American Bash. This wasn't 10% of that match, in all honesty. Had less time. They were both a bit more tired. And again, you know, the kind of thing. I mean, this finish, basically, like, Hart jumps on the apron, Nick Patrick gets, or wherever the referee was, gets right close to him, Hart lobs his megaphone at Flair, and then basically just hugs the referee for 30, 45 seconds. Like, the referee is completely oblivious to this carnage going on in the ring. Anderson nails Randy Savage right next to the ref, who must have felt it if he hadn't have seen it. And then, the match is nothing special. The crowd pop for the title win. Again, it's partly a crowd smart enough to be aware of who Flair is, having been a WCW NWA lifer versus Savage, who's not more recent. It's partly them popping for a title change too. Quickly before we come to our wrap up, Stuart, is there much long-term prognosis for Flair as champion?
No, I think I wouldn't be surprised if they switch it on, you know, very early into 1996, whether it be an early Nitro or Clash of the Champions.
I've got a feeling they might be doing it on, because January 1st is the next Nitro. I've got a feeling they might be doing Flair and Savage, Flair and Hogan, because I know that Raw, I think, is live on January 1st, and they're doing Raw Bowl. And don't be surprised if there's a couple of announcements or a couple of big returns on that, in terms of, speaking of guys like Vader, Steve Austin might appear. So it might be a case of they do Flair and Hogan, and it might be a case of Flair wins the title for 4 days and pitches it back to Hogan, given how they've done this thing with Hogan, given that he was going to go away for a while and now he's not. Stuart, fair to say all bets are off, and when Hogan wins the title, could be next week, could be the first pay-per-view, but it's probably going to be in the first 2-3 months of the year.
Yeah, I would presume it's going to be in the first few months of the year. I guess the program going into 1996 will be Hogan versus the Horsemen, or Hogan, Savage, Sting versus the Horsemen, though given Hogan's track record, it'll probably just be Hogan versus the Horsemen.
If we get Hogan and Benoit and Hogan and Pillman, there's a little bit of intrigue in that, but they must... Let me rephrase this. They must know that there is a very limited shelf life in Flair and Hogan. We saw it in 94. They drew a lot of money in 94. I've no doubt there are worse drawing Hogan programs they could do, but I think it would be a regressive move to go back to Hogan and Flair anything more than a once off. But Hogan against, Hogan in an angle with Flair that maybe has a match in January and a match in April, and then in the middle he faces Benoit, Pillman and Anderson, I would be very interested to see, because I'd be interested to see the kind of match Benoit could get out of Hogan.
I'm going to cut you off. That will not happen, in that Hogan would not put himself in there with a Benoit. He would not sell for somebody sub 6 foot.
Yeah, you may be right. Wade?
Well, yeah, that's the fact is that, yeah, you're probably right, actually. Flair until the new year. Hogan takes the title back. If he's not taking the time off, then he's only going to want to be champion with the power that he seems to have. Then he's the kind of guy that just wants to be on top.
Wayne, your overall thoughts on this show and a score rating out of 10?
Yeah, so I said at the start, I've sat through and watched a lot of really, really bad pay-per-views, and I've come to the end, and I'm really happy about this one. We had a couple of duds in there, but we had some absolute classic matches, and the Guerrero match, the outstanding one, and the one that's going to stick in my mind for quite a long time. All in all, great pay-per-view. I'd probably give it a 7.
Stewart?
I think as a score, I'd probably give it a 6. I think what's encouraging about this one, as opposed to the last few months of WCW shows, is that the quality of matches that have started to seep in on the Saturday nights and the Nitros with the likes of Benoit, Guerrero, etc., haven't really been making pay-per-view. And this is the first time it really feels like they've made an impact on a pay-per-view. So I think there were definite positives coming out of this show, but you've still got the sort of batshit booking which drags it down a couple of points for me in terms of stuff that doesn't make sense. Yeah,
I gave it a 7. I would say this is the best. This is the best WCW pay-per-view of 1995. I'd argue it's probably the best pay-per-view of 95, and we're going to vote on something slightly different. We're going to vote on best show of the year in our end of year awards, which will certainly bring November to Remember into it from ECW last month. Stuart, any thoughts on that? Is there a WWF pay-per-view that stacks up against this?
For me personally?
Either or. Personally or objectively, I guess.
I enjoyed Survivor Series 1995. I thought that was a cracker of a show. And I'd probably even argue that, In Your House 5 was not a great show, in terms of the level of in-ring work for the majority of it, but, the Bret Bulldog match I really, really liked, and, Diesel Owen had things going for it. I'll go with Survivor Series 95. If I was to pick out the two big companies, what my favourite show of this year has been, I would probably go with Survivor Series.
Yeah, again, that's differing opinions, but yeah, that's certainly up there. But yeah, 7 out of 10 for me. The action was, I thought the 7 matches, again, if they'd have, a bit more attention to detail, I think you could have enjoyed, if there had been a reason for this tournament being other than just we need to fill a show, it would have been a lot better. If they'd have told the story with Benoit, I would have been a lot more happy. That was a big tick. And then I was really enjoying the triangle match while Flair was involved. Flair was in for the first 16, 17 minutes, and it was a riot. And then Flair tagged out, and it's not a massive criticism of Luger and Sting. I think in part the crowd flattened out because they went, the match is going to go on for another 10 minutes, and then it really fell off once he had the finish. The main event was a mess. Thankfully it wasn't long enough to the point where I think you could go it was really bad. The action was okay. Flair is good enough that even with a crowd that's a bit flat and a Savage that's a bit injured, he can hold up his end. But yeah, the match, just The show I thought was very good. Again, if you want recommendations, go back and watch. The Benoit match, the Guerrero match, the Alex Wright match are all standouts. They all would have been top 2 matches, I think, on any WCW pay-per-view this year. They would have been the best match on about 3 or 4, I think. And again, it's an obvious thing to say. You put good wrestlers in the ring, they have good matches. Wrestling ain't difficult. That will pretty much wrap up this month's show. This is 27th of December, which is a Wednesday, so there's no Nitro. I did watch the final Saturday night of the year, and that's basically a wrap-up show. Quite a nice show, you can get your hands on it. 2 hours just with a more Saturday night-led focus on a review of the year rather than anything on pay-per-view or anything that came on Nitro. But that was a fun show as well. But other than that, again, no Nitro tonight to really cover. The TV we covered before. No news of any massive... No, I guess there's one quick thing, Stuart, right before we finish. Bringing in Nancy Sullivan, aka Woman, as Elizabeth. We talk about WCW fans not accepting WWF people. I think someone faking Miss Elizabeth. I don't know that's going to work.
Yeah, I don't see that potentially being a long-term thing. I think that's something that WCW fans will see through quite easily. The other angle you've got there is that Nancy, in her other roles, has portrayed a heel. She doesn't have that sort of or timid babyface look that Miss Elizabeth had. I can't see her pulling that off. And also that, as we've seen with the Renegade, it don't always work. You can't just plug someone into another person's role. And let's be clear. Now, Woman in ECW is miles better than Rick Wilson, the guy who played Renegade. But I think there is a point where you tell people it's Miss Elizabeth and they see it's not, they're just going to go, oh, fuck this. Wade?
No, same from me. I don't think you can shoehorn her into that role. If you're going to bring her in, she's either got to be her own personality, or as you both touched on before, she's got the heel characteristics, so she's probably better suited in that role.
And that will wrap up this month's show. I'd like to thank firstly Wayne Lythgoe.
Thank you very much, Bob.
Wayne, you are on Twitter.
I am. That's Wayne L84.
And Stuart Brookes.
Thank you very much, Bob. Been a pleasure.
Stuart, tell people where they can find your what your podcast is about.
Yeah, so I host the New Generation Project podcast, which covers, for the most part, WWF and sometimes WCW pay-per-views, basically between 1993 and 1998. We've had a couple of months of doing sort of different shows. So we've just reviewed Santa with Muscles, which, as I'm sure you can imagine, is a cinematic masterpiece.
That's Hulk Hogan that's Hulk Hogan in the starring role, correct?
Indeed it is. Starring role with a dubious accolade, shall we say. We're on iTunes, SoundCloud, all those general places. If you want to have a chat to us, it's at New Gen Podcast on Twitter.
And you reviewed the Owen Hart DVD. I listened to that today. That sounded quite interesting.
Yeah, it was a difficult one to kind of approach in that there are very strong cases for why it should have been made, and there are very strong cases for why it shouldn't have been made. And I hope we kind of got that across and presented a very even review. I hope we presented a very even review of it.
Forgive me as I didn't hear the final 15 minutes. Did you ever touch on the question as whether this DVD should have been made on the basis that the only rationale for making a DVD of someone like Owen Hart was because of the way he died? I don't know whether you touched on that or not, but that's kind of something that I kind of feel.
No.
Say Owen Hart suffers a career-ending but not life-threatening injury at Over the Edge in 1999 and never wrestles again, but he's otherwise fine. He blows out his knee, whatever. Right? Stays alive, never wrestles again. Do WWE 16 years later make a DVD about him? I don't think they do.
I think there's an argument for that they do, in that obviously they've had Brett back in the fold since 2010 now. I think it's the sort of thing, if were Owen still alive, to keep him happy, they may very well have done that. I mean, they've made DVDs of other people that haven't necessarily been world champions.
Yeah, but they've all been more significant than Owen.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, for Owen, he's significant in a period where business is in a downturn. Yes, if Owen Hart had been the prime of his career had been the Hogan and Warrior years, would he have warranted a DVD? No. But as his prime was in the years when, you know, Brett and Shawn and Diesel were on top, I think there's merit for it. They're making a Scott Hall one next year.
If you're going to talk about impact on the industry, I mean, Scott Hall was 10 times bigger.
I don't know. One of the points they make on the DVD is that, you know, how heavily Chris Jericho was influenced by Owen, and then you've got a ton of sort of your Kevin Owens, your Sami Zayn guys saying we were very heavily influenced by Chris Jericho. So I think that's the kind of line they try and trace back.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, I wasn't quite expecting this discussion, but yes, needless to say that if you want a incentive to listen to the New Gen podcast review of the Owen DVD, once you've listened to the 7 hours that we've got left in this month's shows, I would urge you to check it out. Fine review. Anyway, I'm going to make this end of year bit a bit more streamlined. It's Wrestling20RS on Twitter, Facebook.com. We're on iTunes, we're on RSS. It's all there. Just go to Wrestling20RS.com. You'll find everything. So what our plugs. You've got a ton of shows to listen to. WWF Volume 2, ECW, UFC, and then we've got a couple of end of year review shows. We're going to take the first bit, the end of year review, just after this. And so yeah, I've been Bob Bamber. This has been Volume 1 of the December 1995 edition of the Wrestling 20 Years Ago podcast. And until next time, goodbye.